In a forest clearing, a monstrous demon towers over the fallen hero, and pure panic explodes. One guard yells to retreat, snapping, "Why isn't that other gate guard running?" The young guard doesn't even flinch, just watches and calmly says they haven't even made it to the main store yet. Armed with insane game knowledge, that mob soldier climbed to ultimate strength, then decided to hide it, shrugging off the chaos as nothing, before sprinting forward to slam right into the demon. The world he's trapped in now is straight out of an RPG called **Brave of ***, or **Bria's ***, where you pick the hero, **Callan ***, and slaughter demons while building lifelong bonds with your squad, and the crazy part. He obsessed over this game so hard before he got reincarnated into it. His last life got cut short. He burned out and died from overwork at a brutal, exploitative company. Yet somehow he's grateful, because he was reborn into his beloved Briars, where he now spends his days as a plain gate guard in the capital, Silentia. Right as he's lost in thought, a voice crashes through the air and calls out his new name, Silva. An older guard named Maud steps in and orders the shift change, and Silva nods along, though it stings. He can't shake the thought that he still wasn't reborn as Alan the hero. Still, this life doesn't feel terrible at all. As he heads out, Maud calls after him to grab something on the way. He strides through the roaring town, smiling like he's finally escaped the swamp of non-stop work from his old life, because guarding a gate and still getting paid even when he slacks off is basically paradise, and now he heads straight for his usual street vendor. He strolls along and then bam, something nearby grabs his attention. A merchant is pushing a sword on a young woman, swearing it's top quality and that he'll sell it to her for cheap, even as he won't back off. A woman smiles and says she's not a swordswoman, but Silver clocks her instantly. Charles Orland, a big deal in the story, the kind of ally you meet early and instantly click with. That recognition hits him like lightning, and pure excitement surges through his chest. She was his all-time favorite. The merchant keeps pushing his sales pitch, bragging that the weapon is a holy sword blessed by the Fairy King, so strong even a beginner can't help but draw it. Inside, Silva snorts at the lie, scoffing at how the guy's trying to trick Charlie, even as he admits her naive side is kind of cute. Seeing her right there in the flesh, so undeniably adorable, hits him like a freight train, and pure gratitude floods his chest as he realizes he's alive again, thanking God over and over for landing him in this exact moment. Charles watches, stunned, as a spiky-haired young guy shouts across the plaza to tell him to wait. The newcomer strides up, jabs his finger at the merchant, and snaps that the sword's a total fake. Silver clocks him instantly. It's Alan, the hero of Brave of the exact avatar the player controls. And seeing him in real life hits different, because in the story, Alan is literally destined to fall for Charles. Alan steps in and offers to escort Charles to the castle gate since she's headed out to collect herbs, and Charles agrees on the spot. They leave together, while Silva stands there stunned, saying her name under his breath like it can't be real. While Alan watches them disappear with a clouded stare, a merchant slides up and tells him not to buy a word of Alan's claim, then offers to sell him the sword for a ridiculously cheap price. The merchant keeps hammering his pitch, swearing this sword can turn even a regular nobody into a hero, and right then, every last word snaps Silva's full attention. His face tightens for a second, then he lunges his hands in, stopping the merchant mid-reach, and with a cool, calm voice he shuts the offer down. With a calm, gentle smile he tells them, "I'm only the gate guard, take a normal sword, that's more than enough for me." That blunt refusal leaves the merchant utterly stunned. Then the older man snaps, calls him a strange sort, and storms off muttering that he should hawk the sword somewhere else. As the merchant walks away, Silva's resolve hardens like steel, because he isn't the hero at all. He's just a background nobody, a nameless mob in the real spotlight. It belongs to Alan. This conviction drags straight out of his past life. He remembers drowning in work, and how Bryce was the one thing that actually made him feel alive, so that old memory fuels his craving for a simple life now. He kept staring at the new world he'd been dropped into, and somehow the whole cast felt straight-up charming, especially Charlie, his clear favorite, so he couldn't help but grin, convinced that if the original storyline played out again, Alan and his crew would crush the demon threat and hand the world a bright new era of peace. With pure excitement surging through him, he clenched his fists and realized he had to witness that epic moment for himself firsthand. His mind was sprinting, carving out a plan, because this world was brutal. Demons didn't just exist, they hunted humans non-stop, and survival demanded real power. So he leaned on what he knew best, game knowledge. In every game he'd ever played, his go-to move was clear: hit the maximum level right at the start, then ride that advantage straight into a safer, smarter path forward. He rushed to remind himself that this did mean he wanted to boot Alan, the real protagonist, out of the spotlight, because he always respected the source material. He just planned to use what he knew to pick the perfect spot, grind for years, and crank his status up to the absolute maximum. You'd never forgive anyone for rewriting the original story, especially if it was him doing it, and just watching it all unfold from a distance was enough. Just as he slipped into a daydream, his colleague stormed back. Maud was here. Silva's whole face lit up, and he clasped his hands in pure excitement, blurting out that original works were the best. Maud just stared back, totally baffled, and asked what in the world Silva meant. The older guard barked a laugh and brushed off that weird comment, then told them to grab a drink after work. Silva jumped at it with a loud thumbs up, swearing that nothing beats a beer after the shift. Maud chuckled at how fired up he was and asked if anything good had happened. Right as Silva opened his mouth, a desperate scream ripped through the air. He snapped his head around, eyes bulging, because a giant spider-like demon had crawled into the city, hissing like it owned the place, and Mott just stood there, rooted in pure terror. While the other guards scrambled to figure it out, Maud whipped toward his partner and snapped, "What was that, Silva?" Silva, rattled, blurted the event's name, then caught himself fast, stammering that it was nothing. But I already knew the deal, the Wedge Day, a monthly prelude that hits right before the main story really kicks off. For this one day, demons who never team up actually join forces and launch an attack on the kingdom. The game's script says it barely leaves a scratch, and the hero wipes the demons out fast. As the attack erupted, Maud, the senior guard, roared orders to his men, screaming them into a tighter formation, because they had to freeze in place and hold the line until the hero finally showed up. That creature was just a level 1 demon, so it didn't exactly feel like it could crush the world. Still, it was too brutal for any regular soldier to crack. Silva watched his comrades hack and struggle as their blades bounced off the beast with zero real effect. He figured he could yank the demon out himself, but he hesitated to shake up the whole plan, so he decided to stick to his job as a gate guard and stall it. Then Maud screamed in agony as the creature slammed into her. Silva's eyes turned ice gold, and he started wondering when the hero was finally going to show up. Right there, Silva was at his side in an instant, asking if he was okay, but Maud waved him off, swearing it was just a graze. Then Silva turned back and the demon was gone. Fists clenched, he cursed the thing for daring to hurt Maud and took off running. Seeing Silva's totally uncharacteristic explosion, Maud froze in shock, like had he always moved this fast on his feet. While the city gate erupted in chaos, Charles Orland kicked back beside a calm stream, and Alan splashed and played in the water just a few steps away. With the herbs safely stashed, she decided it was time to link up with Alan, and she yanked on her boots like the next move couldn't wait. Her steps froze mid-motion when a sudden rustle ripped out from the nearby bushes and snatched her attention. She pushed her way into the thick foliage and shouted, calling out for whoever was out there. A flash of silver streaks through the woods, chasing a foe that won't slow down, and he realizes just how fast it is. Then he decides to gamble on cutting off one leg to cripple it. Suddenly his eyes snapped wide with pure shock. He screeches to a stop, eyes locked on Charles Orland, who's right there, standing and clearing the way ahead, and he's left stunned, staring like, what on earth is she doing here? His mind races as he fights to steady himself, convinced, almost like a gut punch, that Charles isn't supposed to be here, that this whole thing is off script, and panic slams into him when he finally realizes her life is on the line, the kind of fate she was never meant to endure. Just as Charles thinks he can breathe, a hulking, dark-skinned demon with pale white hair tears into existence behind him, claws raised to strike. Silva explodes with a furious roar, yanks his sword free, and swears that monster won't ever touch her. He surges forward and fires off Zalinch's sword style, spinning top, so fast he becomes a blur, slicing straight through the demon's torso and stopping its strike just as Charles tumbles backward. The demon's body crumples onto the forced floor, beaten, while Silva snaps his sword back into its sheath. Just like that, the danger's gone, and nearby, Charles drops to the ground, clutching her mouth in shocked relief. Now that the danger's gone, he locks in on Charles and his face shifts, soft, worried, and focused. She tilts her face up at him, cheeks burning, and you can practically see gratitude and relief fighting for space across her expression. He barrels to her side, composure shattering as panic drives his words. He begs her, "Are you okay?" and demands to know if the demon hurt her. Still, Charles can't calm down, but he pushes reassurance hard, saying she's fine. He froze in place as the adrenaline drained away and a wave of horror crashed in. He finally clocked it. He'd just blown the timing completely, blurting, "Oh no, I screwed up." Just as he spiraled in embarrassment, Charles cut in and blurted, "Who are you?" Thinking it meant his job, he blurted back that he was nothing but a gate guard. Then Charles softened with a calm smile and corrected him. She wasn't asking about his work at all. She just wanted his name. She leaned in, eyes locked on him, begging, "Please tell me your name." Her blunt honesty made him look away instantly, and a hot blush crept up his neck. Everything crashed in like a wave. His whole life, this whole mess, suddenly careened off the rails. Then Charles's voice sliced through his thoughts as she thanked him and shouted his name, and he finally forced the words out, shaking, "I am Silva." What? On duty at the castle gate, panic hits Silva hard. He realizes he's just made contact with Charlie, and in a rush he whips around to the nearest woman, blurting that he's on guard duty and has to go. Anxiety rattles through his mind. He remembers he had no choice but to crush the demon right there in front of her, and now he's terrified that move will twist the plot in some ugly, unpredictable way, just as Maud, his superior, shouts his name. The older guard slams the news into his head. Silva has been called straight to the elite Holy Guard's captain. He's stunned, so he blurts, "Wait, did I really hear that right?" and demands to know if Maud truly meant the captain. He flashes a grim smile and says he doesn't know what mess Silva has landed in, but whatever happens next, he'll make sure those funerals are handled. Silva begs him not to throw around those awful omen words, and Maud chuckles, apologizes, then hits her with a real warning. The Holy Knight Order's elite captain is brutally strict. He's basically counting on Silva only getting a scolding. Soon Silva bursts through the gates and lays eyes on his destination, the towering headquarters of the elite Holy Knights Order. Inside, two fully armored knights stride with him through the stone corridors. One gives a sharp thumbs up that everything checks out, then gestures him onward. As he follows, a bead of sweat rolls down his temple, and when he looks up, determination hardens in his eyes. He tells himself he has to do everything he can to avoid running into her. Meanwhile, inside a cramped office lined with towering bookshelves, a woman in ornate armor stands perfectly still, eyes locked on a report as she reads. She's the captain of the elite Holy Knights. She stared at the report clutched in her hands, her eyes bulging with disbelief as Silva was seen approaching the office from the window behind her. With a sudden burst of raw energy, she shot her hands forward and shattered the window glass, then flashed a bright, welcoming smile like she meant it. The door slammed shut behind Silva and he slipped inside, right as the captain greeted him by name with a warm smile. He took her in at a glance, that flowing silver hair, ocean-deep blue eyes, and a body he immediately recognized as one of the top-tier stats in the whole game. He clocked her the moment she appeared, Elda Snow White, captain of the Elite Knights Order, and in his mind, she wasn't just a hero, she was a conquest waiting to be won in Bryce. He tiptoed up and asked if she needed him, and she puffed out her cheeks, called him a thick-headed idiot, and demanded to know why he still didn't get why he was there. A sudden, sickening realization hit Silva like a punch. Eldon somehow knew what he really could do, and the fact that she'd called him over on purpose made his gut twist with dread. Silva's worst fear snapped into place the moment her face hardened. She leaned in and nailed him with the question, "You're the one who took out the demon, right?" Elda pushed him to stop pretending and asked what he really meant. Then she spilled the details, pointing straight at the demon attack from a few days ago, and the report about a demon corpse that had been torn apart completely. She kept pressing her logical takedown, saying the demon had clear scars that proved it fell to a spinning top technique because besides the hero, only the captain of the Holy Knight Order could pull off something like that, and he wasn't even there. She snapped her gaze onto him, demanding to know who else could have done it. So he was left speechless. Eldeline leaned back and declared it was time he faced the truth. With skills like his, she said, he belonged serving the country as a knight. He snaps back at the accusation, saying she left the hero out of her questions on purpose, then blurts almost like a dare, what if the hero really took down the demon? But one brutal thought claws at him from the inside. If he confesses, his peaceful life gets wrecked for good. Captain Elda wraps a finger on her desk and shuts down his theory as naive, then snaps that the hero is required to report every demon suppression to the country, so how is the spider's defeat still a secret on paper? With a sharp grin, she lines in and says she won't tolerate it, demanding he face the truth and join the Knight's Order. Her face twists with shock as he keeps flat out denying it, and she blurts, "How can you still say no?" From across the room, Silver fires back that she doesn't have a shred of solid proof. Frustrated, she presses him. Why is he fighting so hard to avoid joining the Knight's Order? Then she starts firing off reasons, like that handsome wage and a flood of perks from the country, all of them way better than what he's stuck with now. He admits she's right, but then lays out his worries. Once he becomes a knight, missions will come for him. His job will be to back up the hero and guard the country, and the weight of that duty hits him with mixed emotions. He keeps going and says, straight-faced, that he doesn't want to get anywhere near the main characters. When Elda presses him, he waves it off as nothing, but deep inside, he's still doubling down on his choice. He's got zero intentions of ever becoming a knight. Her face tightens into steel as she snaps that his reluctance is a crying shame, and the second persuasion crumbles. She decides she can't afford to stay picky about how she gets results. When she stands up from her desk, a stunned Silva just stares, utterly lost, wondering what on earth she's about to do. Silva freezes in total shock as the elite knight captain shoves a document into his hands. an admission letter stamped with a signature he's absolutely sure he never wrote. He jolts back, staring in horror as he realizes she's gone way too far. Then it hits him. As the captain of the Knight's Order, she could slip past any consequence and walk away with that forgery like it's nothing. Her cold, shrinking attitude evaporates in a split second. She tosses the letter aside and swears it's just a joke, saying she can't drag anyone into this without their consent. Then she shoves a rolled-up scroll into his hands. She grabs the new document and demands to know what it is, and the captain snaps that she'll stop trying to get him to join if he does her one favor, because the paper shows a sketch of a guy he's never seen before. She points out the man, Brajo Bertali, an applicant trying to muscle through the knight's entrance trials, and with a hardened stare she tells her request straight. Silva has to stop him from joining. He spots that surname and instantly fires off a question. Is Brajo really from the legendary Birdley family? The captain confirms it, but her voice drips with pure disdain as she spits out that the man is an irredeemable scumbag. Brajo lays out the mess. She can't just bomb his trials because she's a noble, and the higher-ups will crush her if she does. Then she looks at Silva and says, "That's exactly why you're here." She lays out her whole plan. Silva will spar Brajo in a mock battle during the entrance trials, and she wants him crushed so hard everyone buys that Brajo can't cut it. Then it hits Silva like a punch. He's not helping her, she's using him for sabotage. She weighs the offer, then demands a straight answer. If he steps in for her and pulls off this favor, will she really stop chasing him to join the Order of the Night? Her expression lights up, and a wide, confident smile crashes across her face. She tells him it's the deal, and she's counting on it. Behind the cold stone walls of the capital's fortress, one guard got hit with a brand new problem that would not let up. Trudged through the streets, frustration blazing in every step, because they'd dumped on him the worst, most bothersome job imaginable. He stared at the razor-thin line of his own predicament. Brajo wasn't meant to matter, but somehow he was tied to the Knight's Order, and one wrong move by Silva could trigger consequences nobody could predict, flipping the whole story on its head. That realization locked his resolve in place. Brajo wasn't in the big picture, but Silva barely knew a thing about him, so he had to start hunting for answers. He clenched his resolve and vowed to stay barely in the main character's orbit. Ivaldi would not mess up like that again. Then tap, a light touch on his shoulder shattered his focus. Startled, he jerked around and froze. There was Charles Orland, grinning at him as he shouted, "Silva." Panic hit him first. He blurted that she shouldn't meet him, then immediately scrambled back and stammered that no, he was actually thrilled to finally meet her. And right then, the memory of their first encounter crashed into his mind, the moment he'd steeled himself and decided to go for it. But she didn't let his awkward moment stop her. She reminded him he'd fled right after he saved her, and she'd been searching for him ever since. He stammered that he had pressing things he had to handle. His excuse sounded paper-thin even to him, so he clapped a hand over his face and blurted out a real apology for vanishing without a word, while Charles stared on with a deep, thinking look, then just said, "I see." Then her face tightened the moment that one vital question landed. She jabbed a finger at him and demanded, "Why do you know my name, Silva?" The shock hit him so hard he flinched. Guilt hits him hard for lying to Charles, so he scrambles for a reason and blurts that he was told to guard the nobles at a party, then swears he just happened to spot her name on the attendee list. She stares back, eyes sharp, and asks him straight if that's really what happened. He can only force out a shaky okay, and when he answers, she puffs her cheeks into a playful pout, like she's mad he's coming off so stiff. She tells him she gets it, but pushes back hard. He doesn't have to be so uptight and formal with her, and when he starts to argue that he can't just drop his manners, she cuts him off and says she needs to thank him for everything he's done. He gets flustered and waves off her thanks, insisting he's only doing what any soldier would do, yet she won't back down, swearing she'll do anything for him and even jump in to help with his work. With a strained smile, she finally drops her real goal. She's running an investigation and she needs his help like he has no choice at all, so he bites the bullet and agrees. In the capital city of Zalentia, Silva and Charles step into a loud, blazing red light district, where everyone knows the Birdie Lee family comes to play, one of the country's most powerful noble houses. They meet an informant and she spills the tea. Because the family's so famous, it was effortless to collect every whisper. She passes along the rumors flying around them. Sure, they've bought major leverage with the royal family through huge donations, but people also claim they're tangled up in human trafficking and smuggling illegal drugs. Shocking news hits hard, and Charles shoots a quick, bashful look at Silva as they weave through the packed streets, with stunned locals whispering as they pass. He's convinced, based on what he's been told, that their target is somewhere right around here, and when he clocks her silence, he whips around and demands to know what's wrong. Her face flushes a deep red, and she clamps a hand over her mouth as her shy nerves spill over. Then she blurts out, "So, where are you taking me?" His eyes blow wide with shock as her words land, and he panics, insisting she's totally mistaken. When he reacts like that, she just laughs it off, saying she was only messing with him, and pushes for them to find that Brajo fellow ASAP. Turns out their target, Brajo, is infamous for being a total waste. He burns through his parents' money, guzzles alcohol nonstop every single day, and staggers around drunk out of his mind. Strolling into a quieter alley, those silver wonders glinted, like they'd chosen a spot where a man like him never should have been. Charles tells her he's in the red light district, but he thinks they might have arrived too soon. Right then, Silver's stomach lets out a brutal, earth-shaking growl. Heat floods his face with pure embarrassment, his stomach betraying him in front of Charles. He blurts out an apology, then sheepishly asks if she's hungry and if they can grab something to eat. She nods right away, saying they've got to hunt down a spot with real tasty food. Then Charles blurts, "Same, I'm starving," and her face lights up as she points to a nearby restaurant, sniffing the air and insisting that smell is too good to ignore. The hunch hits pay dirt inside. Charles rips into a huge, mouth-watering hamburger, and her face lights up with pure, non-stop joy. As she digs in, Silva stares at her, stunned, like the world just flipped. He remembers reading that she, a noble, supposedly loves hamburgers, but seeing it for real hits him as weirdly and unexpectedly adorable. Charles keeps watching, his face sunk as he mourns that she'll never land a proper bite, while Silva shrugs it off, saying it's just how it is with hands and a mouth that small. She glares at her meal like it's a puzzle, then thinks it over. After a beat, she shrugs and tells herself it's fine, because at least she still gets to eat the bun. With that realization hitting her, she takes a tiny, delicate bite of just the bread, and Silver finally gets it. This is how she always eats them. He's so completely blown away by her cuteness that it feels like he's one heartbeat away from meeting the afterlife. Once the meal is over, Charles shoots him a grateful thanks, and when she realizes the night's creeping in, she asks where they should pick up their search next. He tells them that at night the red light district turns dangerous, so he'll push the investigation forward alone. But before he can finish, a loud slam hits their table, and someone yells for everyone's attention. Then the whole interruption comes crashing in. Brajo Bertley himself leads a menacing crew, ringed by armored guards, sneering as he demands to know if anyone has spare tables up on the second floor. Had a reputation for starting trouble, like the other day when he snapped that the food was taking forever and hurled a glass, and somehow he also kept forcing himself on girls and shamelessly flirting with them. That attitude reared its ugly head the moment he roared at a waitress, demanding to know how a restaurant could possibly have 0 empty tables, and then he slapped his name, Brajo Bertley, into the air like it was a magic pass, while his entourage just stared, watching the place packed to the brim. His demands kept climbing, and when the waitress apologized, he sneered at her and demanded to know whether she even knew who his father was, then snapped that if there weren't any spare tables, they should just carve one out for him. From their table, Charles watched the chaos unfold and told Silva, "Yeah, that's our guy." Silva leaned in and said he was every bit the scumbag the rumors promised, and she didn't miss a single word as he listened hard. Brajo looked like he just shoved the waitress to the floor, then sneered at the staff as useless trash, swearing he'd ditch this place and find another restaurant. Just as Charles started to spin away, he caught Silver's eye. She leaned in, eyes sharp with realization, then her voice cracked with a quiet, creeping recognition. "Wait, could it be that you're—" Right as she tried to wrap up, Brajo swept in and towered over their table, his eyes locked on her like nothing else mattered. Then he flashed that wide, unsettling grin and called her out by her full name, Ms. Charles Orland, while Silva watched him with a tense, guarded stare. He leaned in like he was trying to charm her, urging her to stop acting so cold and insisting they'd met at a noble's party not long ago. But Charles stared back with 0 recognition and asked bluntly if they'd met before. Her forgetting him lit a fire of rage in his chest, his face twisted as he loomed and demanded, like a threat, if she was really claiming she didn't remember him. Charles tried to pull her memories up, closed her eyes, but had to admit she couldn't. Then her eyes snapped open in pure panic, and a bead of sweat slid down her brow. His face twists into a cruel grin, eyes blazing with rage. He clenches his fist, leans in, and spits out poison through every word, then vows that if her memory is really that foggy, he'll drag out the moment until she remembers him perfectly. Inside a tavern, the nobleman Brajo recoils in disgust, while the young guard Silva stands right in front of him, calm, steady, and clearly determined. Telling himself to calm down, he scoots closer to Charles Orland and snubs the dingy tavern they're stuck in, then offers to whisk her to a fancy restaurant, saying her beauty is already the talk of high society, and he can't wait to know her better. Charles shuts it down with a blunt refusal. She's not interested at all, and right beside him, Silva's face contorts into a tight, furious grin, calling the man's shamelessness unforgivable. She keeps waving him off, but Brajo won't quit, promising exquisite food, top-shelf liquor, and fancy fruit juices like it'll fix everything. Then Charles lets out an exasperated sigh and cuts in. She's not old enough to drink yet. After getting shut down again and again, Brajo's smooth act finally crumbles. His eyes ice over as he glares at her, sneering that she's nothing but a wench. Then the spotlight snaps to Silva. He jabs a finger at the guard and fires off a question to Charles, asking if that's her bodyguard, and before she can even answer, Silva lunges forward and claims it for himself. He says he's Lady Charles Orland's bodyguard, and that this will give him the perfect excuse to step in and protect her the moment Brajo tries anything. Stunned by his sudden declaration, Charles snaps her gaze away, cheeks flushing as she blurts out a shaky agreement. Brajo's face lights up into hysterical laughter the moment the confirmation hits, and he scoffs that some plain-looking mob guy like that could ever protect a noble. Then the nobleman keeps needling him, and Silva's smile turns razor-wide and terrifying as his teeth grit, and the thought of just chopping that man's head clean off flashes through his mind. He keeps throwing insults, sneering that Charles' family must be short on manpower, then offers to lend her one of his bodyguards, shoving salt into a wound. As Silva hears it, his face hardens, guilt crashes through him when he finally clicks. It's his presence that's putting Charles through this brutal public humiliation. With a chilling laugh, Brajo waves his hand at his squad and swagger bombs the moment. He claims every last one is an elite bodyguard, ex-members of the Holy Knights Order, hand-picked by his family. Then he shoves 4 hulking, fully armored brutes in front of you like living receipts, daring anyone to say they don't look made to serve him. As they storm away from the confrontation, Charles tells Silva it's time to leave, but he's stuck in his own head, muttering that he can't believe Holy Knights Order members would actually betray everything for someone that pathetic. Brajo's loud, obnoxious laughter slices through the air, and Charles snaps his head back, totally confused, while Brajo jeers that they'd better crawl their way back to their mansion safe with a bodyguard who looks like that. A confident smirk blooms on her lips as she spins around and declares, loud and fearless, that Brajo's bodyguards don't even measure up to him. Once they're good and far away, she blurts an apology to Silva, admitting she snapped because they were laughing at him. Silva's stunned. He never thought she'd get mad on his behalf, and it feels like a blessing. Then he smirks and says maybe poking them was a smart move, asking if she wants something from them, but she's still totally lost on what he means. He locks onto this as the perfect chance to sniff out info on Brajo, right when boom, the nobleman's guards crash the scene. The lead guard snarls that they're ready to put Charles Bowes to the test. She whips him a sharp side glance, and in that split second they lock in no words, just a silent truth, as the armored men close in. Silva snaps his focus back to the guards and accepts their challenge without a flinch, calm as ever. The lead guard flashes a grin, saying he's exactly what he wants to see. With a sharp crack of his knuckles, he demands answers, tell him every single wrong Brajo has done. The guards hit the ground with a heavy thud, panic flashes across their faces, and they instantly fold, screaming that they'll tell him everything. He listened, eyes bulging in sheer disbelief as the terrified guard finally started talking, sweating buckets, shaking nonstop, admitting Brajo's crimes went way deeper than anyone knew, with even more details still to come. He rattled off a whole list: counterfeit drugs, blackmail, brutal assaults, and according to him, this nobleman was nothing but one massive, unapologetic scumbag. Brajo's man pins Silva with a knife to his throat and blurts out the whole scheme. Once the entrance trials are cleared, Brajo plans to grab leverage over the captain and take full control of the Knight's Order. Brajo's real plan is to twist the order until it obeys him, putting the townspeople in danger and letting corruption spread like wildfire across the whole country, so Silva immediately knows he has to step in and stop it. He loomed over the beaten guards, told them he'd bury their defeat instead of reporting it, then ordered them to march back to their master and spin a fake tale of victory, never, ever a word about what really happened. It dives straight into the aftermath when Charles Orland strides up and calls him Silva, and she practically praises him to his face, saying no regular soldier could have wiped out a demon like that, and asks how he got so strong. He grinned at her and cheered her up by admitting the training was brutal, and then he confessed that for years he'd been hiding out in the mountains. He leans in and admits the place is crawling with monsters, that he's been almost dying every single day, that's how he got this strong. Then he spots Charles' worried face and quickly reassures her. She doesn't have to use anything that dangerous. He flashes a warm smile, risking everything on the idea that Charles will grow stronger from this pain. Then Charles, moved by her faith, tells her, if you truly believe that, then trust me. Once everything's settled, they stride off together. Then Silva blurts that he's starving and pushes them to find somewhere new to eat, and Charles immediately snaps back, asking if he's actually been treated. Later that night, a towering silhouette cuts through the starry sky, and Charles's voice rings out, saying, yeah, of course she'll treat him, because nerds always feel obligated to take care of their favorites. The day the Knight's order calls for the entrance trial finally hits and the announcement drops. All 127 trials kick off with the first exam, a mock fight. One-on-one bouts go down, paired by lottery, and every winner claws their way forward. Clutching the notice, Silva steals his courage and pledges to stop Brajo from taking control of the order, yeah. Brajo Bertley never expected to run into his target this fast. He thrust out a bony finger and spotted Silva, the same dull bodyguard from before, and Silva just nodded at him, completely unfazed, even as he couldn't believe Brajo was there too. The nobleman sneered and said he could say the same, then bragged that his bodyguard had already reported what happened, how they were supposed to crush Silva and teach him a lesson. So why, in all seriousness, did Silva look completely unhurt? With a knowing grin, he said he'd only gone to the church for a healing potion. And yeah, it cost him a fortune. Then he shot a sharp jab at the idea of Brajo struggling to afford one himself. Rage tore through Brajo when someone sneered at the mere mention of a healing potion, and he proudly swept his arm toward his gleaming armor, bragging that it was the real deal, crafted from incredibly rare orichalcum. Then, right on cue, an official voice boomed both their names and ordered Brajo, Bertillet, and Silva to march to the center of the training grounds. The moment Brajo realized they were about to face off, he exploded into mocking laughter, declaring Silva an unlucky man he couldn't believe he'd gotten so easily, while Silva stayed perfectly calm and said, "You're right, Sir Brajo." What? Turning to the trial examiner, he inquired about the consequences of killing an opponent. The examiner stated plainly that such an act would result in disqualification. A look of mock relief crossed Brajo's face as he turned back to Silva, telling the mob soldier that he had narrowly escaped. With a cruel grin he pushed forward, then snarled, sword up, and lunged with a roar, "Here I come." The charge got snuffed out fast. Silva barely twitched a finger and Brajo's sword flew clattering from his grasp. Brajo just froze, staring in total disbelief, stuttering like he couldn't process what he'd seen. Silva shrugged it off like, must have slipped, then smirked that Brajo barely got away. And as he watched him, a colder thought crossed Silva's mind. Could one solid hit finish him, even with that armor on? Then he pitched a brutal plan. What if he struck Brajo the very same way? Brajo's face flushed as he shot back that his first lunge was just a decoy, a simple hand decap to bait Silva into moving first. And now, Brajo declared, Silva would finally get the first hit. With a cocky grin, Silva snapped up the offer and fired back. Brajo's arm was already numb, so he couldn't even swing a sword. Then Silva moved like a streak of lightning and smashed him. The hit blasted Brajo across the training grounds, where he skidded and tumbled through the dust. Silva loomed over his beaten opponent as he clawed for dignity, blurting that he'd just tripped, and Silva watched the pathetic excuse go down like it meant nothing. He calmly said it really did look like Brajo had tripped, and that just sent his opponent into a fresh wave of rage, who snapped back that he still hadn't even unleashed his full power. Brajo seethed at him, slammed him for skating by unluck alone, and declared he was done, ending this match for good, the one he insisted he'd never truly won. The moment the sword started to gleam, Silva just stared back from across the arena, clocking the danger without flinching. He slammed a hand onto the pommel of his own sword, and a gentle glow spilled from the blade as he quietly called up a magic boost. This technique is the heart of magic. Channel your inner mental power, push it into your body, and you become as tough as steel. Pour it into a weapon, and even a plain sword turns so razor-sharp it cuts through iron like it's nothing. His thoughts spiraled into where that kind of power really came from, because demons, humanity's ancient nightmare, have bodies no mortal could break, and only by freely controlling magic could someone earn the right to become a real hero, a skill so rare most people spend their whole lives never even feeling it, let alone using it. Silver keeps his cool, eyes locked on the armor orichalcum, plain as day. Without that shield, their bodies can't stand a chance against him. Then the guard's presence slams down like a crushing wave, and Brajo Bertley starts sweating hard, trembling where he stands. He stammers out questions, confused and scared. What happened to Silver, and what is he actually trying to pull? Merc snaps at Brajo, reminding him he's the one who's supposed to swing first, because you don't win a duel by standing there, you win by striking. He recoils in pure terror, snapping that Silva is plotting to kill him, and blurts out that some low-ranking nobles must have hired that guard for a measly payout. Then the moment the word bottom feeders lands, Silva's face turns ice cold. The moment Brajo mentions Charles, the nobleman jolts and flinches hard. Then Brajo realizes just how different Silva is now, like he's been replaced by a whole new person. Locking eyes with Silva, Brajo suddenly realizes the guard isn't bluffing, he's set on killing him. Panic explodes, so Brajo scrambles to flip the plan, promising he'll hire Silva himself, straight out of his own money. He keeps begging, dangling a fortune bigger than Charles could ever dream of, and even throwing in offers of women, just to get Silva to bend, but Silva doesn't budge. He only asks if Brajo's truly ready, then growls that if Brajo wants to live, he'd better not move, so Brajo bursts into terrified cries. Brajo swings one last, desperate pitch for fine women, better even than Charles, and it's instantly a fatal mistake, because Silva's face contorts with rage as he rips into the roar, demanding Brajo shut up and swear she'll never say her name again. Rage surging, he lunges forward and detonates a brutal technique, Zalencia's white waterfall sword style, his blade slicing through the air and slamming into Brajo with insane speed and raw force. The strike lands with a vicious clang and Brajo freezes, stunned, speechless, while a clean slash opens across his chest plate, the metal starting to crack and peel away as it drops. With a final thunk, the shattered armor hits the ground and clatters loud. Brajo yells in total disbelief, his brain refusing to accept that his Orch alchem-forged armor could have been destroyed. In the middle of a stone arena, Silva towers over his beaten opponent as the guy crumples to the ground and blurts out his surrender, trembling. Silva nods, accepts the yield, and finally exhales in quiet relief, because his mission's done, and all that's left is to race back and report to Elda. From her spot, Elda watches it all, a small, smug smile tugging at her lips as she declares his victory, while the armored guard beside her freezes in total shock, whispering Silva's name like he can't believe what he just saw. The crowd's rising chatter snaps his focus. He whips his eyes toward the stands, and when he sees the non-stop chattering crowd, alarm hits his face and a wave of dread crashes over him. A scary thought hits him out of nowhere. He's probably drawn way too much attention to himself. Inside her office, Captain Elda leans into her desk with a smug grin and tells the guard, "Because of you, we stopped Brajo from joining our order." She keeps going, eyes shut with quiet determination, swearing they'll dig up airtight proof of Brajo's brutal crimes so they can finally get him locked up. Then she snaps back that what he's done is unforgivable, and thanks Silva one more time. Determination hardens in his eyes. He clenches his fist and tells the captain she's got to hear this. He's counting on her. Then Elder reminds him of their promise, and the message is clear. Now it's time to make Brajo pay for disrespecting Charlie. Then she tells him straight up, since he helped crash Brajo's plans, she's done. He won't be getting an invitation to the Knight's Order anymore. His face instantly lights up in a huge, relieved grin, like he's finally breathing again, and he blurts out how grateful he is, overjoyed that peace is about to come back for real. Elda watches, stunned, because she can tell he's dead serious about not wanting to join. Her shock snaps into disbelief, and tears flood her eyes as she grabs him and demands, "Are you really sure, really?" Silva answers without hesitation, dead certain and not interested in the slightest. Her calm instantly cracks. She slams both fists into the desk, and Elder erupts in a tear-soaked rage, begging him to be her knight and screaming that she wants him beside her, demanding to know why he refuses, while Silva just stares in shock, realizing this promise is nothing like the one he thought he'd get. He watches her break down, stunned that a spoiled brat, Elda-level chaos, would actually hit today, and with a heavy sigh, he remembers he has to keep his word, so he reaches out and offers her a handkerchief. She snatches the cloth, sniffing hard as gratitude floods her voice, swearing she'll wash it and return it. Then she watches her tears fall, grabs his arm, and begs him to keep doing his job as a gate guard at least. Silva slips free, walks off by himself, and tells himself he'll stay out of sight for now, while two other guards trail his back with a stunned comment, saying he looks like some generic mob from a game, nothing like the threat they were told about. He catches two guards talking and hears about a new demon sighting, his third this month, and Silva's face tightens with quiet worry. The news hits him hard. He leans over his post and stares across the city, letting out a heavy sigh as demon activity spikes, and he can't shake the feeling it's tied to the main story he knows is about to explode. He plops down, feeling the spotlight has been clinging to him a little too hard lately, and all he can do is pray these fresh developments don't derail the story in a big way. Since Alan's the protagonist, a happy ending for this world feels basically locked in. His thoughts flash a quick image of Alan standing victorious like a true hero. His mind gets shattered by a sudden, thunderous slam right beside him. He jerks his head around, and a bead of sweat immediately forms on his temple. He flings his arm up as whatever hits him slams down with brutal force, blasting dust and debris into the air. Then, through the haze, he spots her smiling down at him, and his stomach drops as he realizes exactly who it is. The hooded figure slips into the light, turning out to be a woman in a fancy dark outfit with a sheath sworder at her side. She stares down at the stunned guard crumpled on the ground, locks eyes, and says, "There you are, Silva." Then she grins like she owns the moment and introduces herself. "I'm Special Great Hero Kaguya." Her dramatic entrance instantly drags a crowd into the scene, and the onlookers start buzzing the moment they spot Lady Kaguya. Then they whisper in shock about what a special grade hero is doing here. As Silva tries to slink off, praying he can stay out of the main character's orbit, Kaguya closes the distance, eyes sharp and voice silky. "Darling," she murmurs with a sly grin, "I've been hunting you for what feels like forever." Right before he can even react, she clamps her arms around him from behind in a fierce hug and blurts, "Where do you think you're going, leaving your dear wife behind?" while the flustered guard silently begs for help. Still trapped in her arms, he listened while Kaguya marched right up and introduced herself, claiming she was the love interest who dropped out of nowhere and the only hero ever crowned a special grade. Then she bragged about her brutal skill with both magic and a blade, so terrifying she once tore a level 4 demon in half just laughing the whole time. Bottom line, she was declaring herself humanity's ultimate weapon. She leaned in even closer, declaring herself a real monster, and the scariest part was that she knew, just like Elda, exactly what he could do. She told her that this was exactly why she clung to him so hard, because even if everyone said Alan was his soulmate, Kaguya was sure fate had yanked them together for a reason. Overwhelmed, he tried to flip the whole conversation, telling her to shove him out of her mind and throw herself back into her hero duties. Then he hit her with the truth that demon activity had been spiking hard lately. She shot the idea down on the spot, saying those duties held zero spark for her, because staying with him was way more thrilling. His eyes went wide with disbelief. He couldn't wrap his head around how someone with her status could brush off her duties like they didn't matter. As he sputtered that he didn't even remember them becoming a married couple, she zipped right in and cut him off, declaring she was totally allowed to stay by his side, because of course she was his wife. While she mapped out their wedding plans with stars in her eyes, he felt like he was talking to a brick wall, though deep down, he still had to admit the offer sounded way too good to ignore. Kaguya, totally unbothered, then popped the idea of checking out a quirky cafe she'd found so they could steal some real couple time together. Before he could even answer, she yanked his arm and dragged him off. His furious protests about being married got totally steamrolled. Meanwhile, at the Holy Knight's headquarters, Elda was hunched over her desk reading a report, and the moment her eyes landed on the news, her face twisted with fury because the Holy Knight had failed to catch that cursed demon again. She stands in her office, staring daggers at one named Silva, while rage simmers over a past failure, certain that if he'd just been with them back then, everything would have turned out different. Then, crack, her fist slams the desk. After that explosive outburst, she storms to the window, folds her arms, and stares down at the city like it's pulling her straight into old memories. Her eyes snag a tiny folded wallet sitting on the windowsill. That mysterious object snaps him right back into her thoughts. She can't help it, even now. In this brutal mess, she still feels it, like he's about to pull off something wildly extraordinary. Her mind rips back to a chaotic battlefield, then a knight's desperate scream tears through the noise. The hero's been taken. The words are the worst anyone can say in war, and it hits hard because there are just too many enemies. Then she sees it, a massive horned demon gripping the fallen hero, and panic turns to purpose as she grabs control, orders everyone to fall back and fights to buy them time. She already knew reinforcements were coming. Kaguya was on the move, but the injury burning her body made her ask one brutal question: how much longer could she last? Still, before Kaguya arrived, she clenched her resolve and took matters into her own hands, cutting down demons to lessen the damage and buy them every second she could. The fight tore at her like a storm. She figured if it had been just one demon, she could have pushed through, even with her injury, but 2-level demons. That was a mountain too steep. Then wham, an abrupt, sharp impact ripped through her, and pain jolted through her whole body. A demon's claw rams into her side, and she clenches her teeth as pain screams through her. Then she steels herself and swears inside that she'll never throw her life away for nothing, just as a faint glow starts to flare from her armor. She lunges and unleashes a brutal sweep, carving a line straight across the horned demon's chest, and he just grins, completely unbothered, brushing it off like it's nothing. She rockets past, desperate to finally catch up to her comrades. The demon roars that she won't get away, then rockets through the air to cut her off, an absolutely terrifying leap as her knights cower in pure terror. She never forgot him from that day, no glowing knight, no shining armor. He wore battered steel and plain shoes, but when the demon showed up, he stood his ground and stared it down without flinching. She started screaming a warning, but he bulldozed right over her, telling her they hadn't even hit the main event yet. With that, he barreled ahead, slashing with his sword and bellowing nonsense like it meant everything, and Elda just stood there, grimly sure it would all be pointless. But Kaguya, standing right there, read the moment totally differently. Elder remembered the way he stared, convinced he was the most beautiful guy she'd ever seen in any night. The memory slipped away, and right in the present, Elda told Silva that ever since that day, she kept badgering him to join the Holy Knight's order, only for him to keep shutting the door every single time. She yanked him by the collar, her voice blazing with conviction. and told him she knew, deep in her bones, that the power he'd been given was meant to guard this world. The very next day, Elda barreled into the attack site, and the first thing that hit her was her night duty commander, stunned that she'd shown up herself. The knight's report dropped 2 names as victims, and he insisted it smelled like a cunning demon, no trail left behind. That's when he said they'd have to call in Sir Hero. She told him she'd already begged him to come, but since they still had 0 clues about their target, she snapped that they'd keep pushing the investigation first. Then she ordered the knight to continue his report, and he immediately agreed. She pressed the grim details. Both victims were women, and their bodies bore savage bite marks like their blood had been sucked dry. With no other clues in sight, he guessed the demon was probably over level 3, and Elda's expression snapped colder as she absorbed the horror, horrified by how brutal the whole situation was. In front of her, pure devastation reigned, bodies sprawled everywhere, clothes torn, faces twisted in silent screams, and it all screamed one thing: the demon's brutal attack left no mercy. With her fist clenched in pure frustration, she snapped to the knight beside her, demanding he race a message to the other knights and haul Gateguard Silva to the Knight's Order's headquarters. Then she shouted at full volume, throwing every holy knight and soldier into full alert and ordering the scout regiment to widen its search at once. With armored guards standing watch, Kaguya scoots in close to Silva, bursting with excitement about their first mission together and calling him darling. Silva visibly panics, then snaps, "Stop saying that." He can't stop cursing his luck. Yesterday was already brutal with Kaguya trailing him non-stop, and today he's been ordered to investigate the demon attack like he walked straight into a total mess. Several hours earlier, during a briefing with the elite knight captain, Elda, Silva grilled her about a vampire, and Elda answered his questions with a clear confirmation. It's basically confirming that vampire is just the catchy name everyone's using for the demon attacker from that incident the other day. She keeps talking and tells him there were 2 victims, both found dead with every drop of blood ripped away, their necks marked with clear bite wounds. In the present, Silva blurts out, "What are you doing here, Hagya?" while she snuggles right up to his arm, grinning as she insists she does whatever she wants, and it has nothing to do with the captain, who's glaring at them with pure, stern judgment. Swift and sharp, Elda slaps Kaguya's hand away from Silva, then snaps, telling those filthy, lascivious desires to let him go. She shoves Kaguya back and fires off her demand again, but Kaguya doesn't flinch, just calmly says, "I wasn't doing anything, I was only linking arms with him." Higya calls the captain up tight, and Elda snaps back in a rage. "I'm right in the middle of a serious conversation." She steadied herself, muttering under her breath, then snapped that they had to get back on track, no more detours. She started spelling out the target's details, and the culprit behind the demon attack looked like an evolved bloodbath, something that could shapeshift into a human, which is exactly why no one could find it, and its power level. They figured it was over 3. She spun toward Silva, eyes sharp as she warned that even a level 3 demon would shred skilled knights, so she locked in a determined stare and told him, "This is your moment." The whole mission's weight slammed onto his shoulders. He saluted with a sheepish flinch, confessing his doubts. "Look, I'm just a gate guard, I only run errands." Elda didn't even blink. She said they were short on manpower and needed him for the investigation, even if he insisted on doing things his own way. Her offer to let him act on his own stopped him cold. He stared at those 2 women with a suspicious glare, and Kaguya immediately demanded what was wrong. After a beat of hesitation, he finally admitted he had to ask one thing first. His gaze tightened, eyes locked on Elda as his stare sharpened like a blade, and he demanded, straight up, whether she had any hidden motive behind handing him this assignment. That question blindsided her, and she burst into a flustered fit of laughter, waving her hands like, "No way, not that," because she wasn't plotting some big scheme at all. She wasn't even hoping that by helping with the investigation, he'd earn other people's respect. And then, with that done, it'd be way easier for her to officially invite him to join the Knight's Order. Her nervous laughter kept spilling through the room, and after a beat of silence, he finally cut in with a blunt remark. She just accidentally blurted out every last detail of her secret plan. He let out a deep sigh, and the truth clicked. She had a plan, and he finally understood it. He told her that for a simple investigation, he normally couldn't turn down an order, but he'd take this one. And just as he started to finish his sentence, Kaguya popped up right beside him with a bright grin. "Since you're helping, I'm helping too." And that surprise declaration absolutely stunned him. The captain slammed her hand on the desk and protested, "Wait, Kaguya." She snapped, warning that Kaguya's involvement would blow up the whole plan, but Kaguya didn't even flinch. "I don't care about your plan," she said. All she wanted was to ride along with Silva, and the captain only groaned, trapped in pure frustration. She let out a frustrated groan, then finally caved. Fine, she admitted they'd take every bit of help they could get. Fixing them both with a sharper glare, she ordered them to show up for the upcoming investigation meeting, where they'd be filled in on every detail. Silva slams his knuckles on the heavy door, then shoves it open and strides inside, calling out that they're here, Kaguya trailing right on his heels. Their sudden arrival snaps every knight's attention at once. Whispers hit the room like a ripple, quick and hushed, as they trade questions about this mystery soldier until they spot the woman beside him. Then the murmur swells. Why would Lady Kaguya, the great hero herself, stand with someone just like him? They land on one answer fast. It must be Captain Eldis's orders. Kaguya, though. She shuts her eyes and wears a quiet, knowing smile, soaking up every stare like it's exactly what she expected. A whisper ricochets through the huge briefing hall as everyone crowds around a big round table, and right there, Silva and Kaguya stand side by side, spaced apart from the other knights who keep right on gossiping. In the briefing room, Kaguya strides up to a table packed with knights, Silva included, who looks totally stunned, and she grins like she owns the place, asking if she can sit with them. Silva blurts out yes, still rattled, and Kaguya beams, thanking him before she takes her seat. She leans in with a mischievous glint and a laugh that somehow steals the moment, and deep down Silva snaps into focus, because yeah, it's her pulling every eye in the room. Everyone crowds in around the giant round table, and the officer on duty kicks it off. Tonight's investigation meeting about the vampire attack is starting right now. They kick things off by laying out every known detail for the group, starting with the two victims, both in their 20s, whose bodies were found in the northern part of the capital. As the grim details spill out, Maud snaps and curses the wretched demons behind it all, while Silva stands there, stunned, realizing this attack case was never part of Brea's main story. He digests this new clue and realizes, if it's a detour, then the main characters won't step into the fight, and the whole case will probably sort itself out without them. That thought hits him like a wave of nervous relief. He darts a sideways glance at Kaguya, and there she is with her eyes shut, clearly dozing off right in the middle of the briefing. He quickly reels in the meeting's ending, then it hits hard. They're widening the search range and setting up a night patrol, and guess who's leading it? He and Kaguya are in charge of the eastern gate. With her new orders, he turns to his partner, cheerfully announcing that it's time to go investigate. He calls her name, but then realizes with a start that she is still completely fast asleep. Stairsteps were practically rolling out the welcome mat for him, and pure disbelief hit his face as he muttered, dead serious. He strode up to that big stern knight and flashed a shaky, nervous smile, ready to help, only for the knight to stare down at him like trouble, frown hard, and bark out which group he'd been assigned to. As soon as Silva's answer hit the air, the whole night snapped with frustration. People started grilling Captain Elda's judgment, and Silva couldn't wrap his head around it. Why would a special grade hero get paired up with some regular soldier from the Eastern Gates Guard Regiment? Then he exploded with fury, saying Kaguya was meant to join his unit, the Second Holy Knight's Order, and once Silva heard that, everything clicked. This guy wasn't just recruiting, he was trying to steal the hero and take all the credit for himself. That knight leaned in like a threat, his voice dropping into a dangerous growl as he warned Silva for his insolence. Yet Silva didn't flinch, answering calmly that the knight had no say in the decision. Rage boiled in his veins as the knight leaned over the sleeping Kaguya and barked at Silva to vanish from the investigation right now, like this was something way beyond any mere soldier. Before Silva could finish saying he was obeying the First Holy Knight Order's captain, the man exploded forward and yanked him by the collar, hissing that they served the Second Order and wouldn't bow to the First, while a terrified subordinate watched, knowing their leader was crossing the line. Shoved Silva back and roared that, as elite members of the Second Order, they wouldn't stand for the First Order beating them at anything. Suddenly his subordinates started trembling, trying to shove out a warning that something stood right behind their leader. A cold voice sliced through the night, barking at him to shut up. Then he froze, sweat beading on his brow, and whipped around in pure confusion. Standing on the table, Kaguya seethed, her eyes blazing with fury as she snapped that tonight was brazen to touch her darling, dark energy churning around her like a storm. And as Silva finally broke free, she just stared in shock, begging Kaguya to calm down. She shot in like lightning, her sheathed katana flashing as it slammed into the Second Order leader's armor with a brutal crack, and Silva, totally blindsided by the sudden, ferocious strike, could only gasp her name in pure disbelief. The blow slammed the massive knight down so hard the floor shook, thud. Kaguya stood over his wrecked form, lifted one hand, and fixed the stunned crowd with icy eyes as she snapped, "Stay back." With a smug grin, Kaguya tightens her fist as the knights who ambushed them crumple to the ground, defeated. She sneers at their nerve for daring to lay hands on her husband. Silva freezes in pure disbelief, wondering if she really heard that her special great hero, no less, say something like that. Then Kaguya whips around and flashes him a playful wink, all while apologizing for not holding back, and he can only stand there, shattered and stunned at how fast she went. As he tries to walk away, he blurts out that her sudden magic will mess with his heart, but she's drifting in a daydream, sighing sweetly about how romantic a night patrol sounds. She beams at him, defending her actions with one question: isn't it only natural for a wife to protect her husband, especially after Salem went and attacked him? He admits she saved him but grumbles that she pushed it too far. Then Kaguya flashes a smug grin, brushes off his complaint, and demands praise for protecting him. Silva clocks his dull, doubtful face and calls it out. Then all Silva can manage is a tired, defeated sigh. That guy swears she's telling the truth about loving him. She even fires off her reasons. She adores how he always looks out for everyone, and she says teasing him is what makes it all so damn fun. Her expression melts into real affection, and she admits it plainly. His biggest strength is the one he keeps hidden from everyone else, and she adores every bit of it. He snaps his gaze away, already convinced he'll never get a real shot to go all out, until Kaguya leans in close and taps his cheek, whispering that she wants to see him show off for once. She glides up into the air in front of him, rocking a small smile, and muses that responsibility comes bundled with strength, then pretends she doesn't know what she's talking about. Down below, Silva just stares, replaying her words in silence. Responsibility. She stood beside Kaguya beneath the night sky, gazing upward, then called his name and yanked his attention to the blazing full moon, marveling at how breathtaking it was. His eyes snapped to where she was looking, drinking in every detail. Before he even asked his next question, he nodded along with her assessment and dug for answers about where she came from. Kaguya snapped her gaze to him, face dead serious, and threw out a wild what if. If she claimed she was born straight from the moon, would he actually buy it? That question yanked a brutal memory straight out of Kaguya, back when she was just a kid, picked to be a secret vessel for stealing a moon's magic, while shadowy watchers circled her, and one of them even knew her real nature. Moonlight power had turned her into the strongest, but every bit of strength was paid for in tears. When she snapped back to the moment and asked her, what if question, Silva answered right away, honest and sure, and his I'd believe you hit her like a sudden strike. Her shock melted into a warm, relieved grin, and she let out a soft laugh, happy he believed her, before whispering a quiet, heartfelt thank you. Then he laid out his reasoning and pushed the idea that saying she came from the moon would only make her seem even more heartbreakingly romantic. That sudden explanation slammed into her like a wave she couldn't even speak. Romantic, the word rang in her head, and she froze on the spot, cheeks burning as she scrambled to make sense of what he just said. Her composure shattered, she flailed a finger at him, sputtering that he was finally acting shy, then playfully accusing him of emotional abuse for how he teased his wife, only for him to stay cool and bluntly correct her. She wasn't his wife at all. That blunt correction hit him like a thrown punch, and he froze mid-sentence. Then his face sank as the realization finally landed. His words just weren't right. His thoughts got snatched away when a strange scent slithered through the street, and suspicion snapped into his face. He and Kaguya stood alone in the quiet alley, that unfamiliar smell ringing alarm bells in his gut. That smell hit first, and then, boom, right from the guts of the city came a blood-curdling scream. Silva whipped around and called Kaguya's name, and he knew the moment she said it, she'd heard it too. They started charging toward the sound, and dread snapped into place, because he recognized that scent. Right as he tried to blurt out his realization, Kaguya suddenly buckled. Grinding pain snarled in her throat as she grabbed her stomach, twisting her face with pure horror and disgust. Then she gasped it out. That stench wasn't random, it was demons. In a shadow-choked alley, Alan and Kaguya stumble on a brutal sight. Some hooded fiend hovers over a fallen knight like a monster. Rage flares in Alan's chest as he yanks his sword, snarls for answers, and rockets straight at the figure. He slid through the shadows with freakish speed, vaulted onto the nearest wall, then tore off into the night, and as Alan watched the figure vanish, rage snapped him for hesitating even for a second. He snaps his focus to the victim and barrels to her side to check if she's still alive. Feeling down, he is relieved to find that the elite knight captain is still breathing. He turns to Kaguya and pleads, "Can you take the captain to the medical office?" Then he straightens up, declares he's going after the demon, no hesitation. She doesn't mind, but she presses him, asking if he can really handle the chase alone. He grins with total confidence and tells her to relax, this is all on him. With that locked in, he fires off a skill. His whole body ignites in raw power, then shouts the magic enhancement and rockets into the sky, sprinting across the city's rooftops under the blazing full moon. His eyes slice through the dark and snap onto his target. He's got him. He cranks up his speed, rockets across the rooftops, and yells for that figure to stop, because the assassin is insanely fast, but Alan is gaining fast and closing in. Suddenly, the assassin's cloak unravels into a screaming swarm of flapping creatures, and Alan halts dead in his tracks, shocked by a whole horde of bloodbaths exploding out of nowhere. He slammed through the swarm, hacking down the bloodbaths as they closed in from every side, gritting through the strain, only to realize the sheer number of them made the whole mess an absolute nightmare. While he fought, Alan couldn't stop wondering, could this cursed demon really control its own minions? And just like that, across the chaos, another young man watched in silence with a sharp, knowing stare, recognizing the move as Alench's sword style. He finally put the style to work, driving a savage wild thrust straight through the bats, ripping them apart, while the hooded figure jerked back in shock, and Alan, eyes blazing on his target, snapped that he'd caught up at last. The hooded figure's face tensed hard, and a sharp flicker of irritation snapped through the shadows. Alan's chase slipped past, so the assassin spun on his heel and bolted, but the bloodbath surged right back in. "Hold up," he snapped, rage flaring as panic hit. With nowhere else to go, he dug deep and made his sword burst into a blazing, brilliant light. The dark-haired swordsman screams as he slashes, but the hooded assassin bursts apart on impact, turning into a swarm of shadowy, bat-like creatures, while a vicious stabbing snap echoes down the alley. He watches the last of the figures vanish, one lone bat-like shadow slicing across the full moon, then stands there by himself, sword bared, only to sheath it in bitter frustration when he realizes his target slipped away. Night duty finally ended, and he raced toward the local clinic, where warm light spilled from the windows into the dark. Inside, Kaguya greeted him and immediately asked, "Did you come back empty-handed?" The swordsman sat on a bench, sweating out an apology for losing the creature, then said he still managed to save a life with something called hemenitic. Kaguya leaned in and asked if he got hurt at all. He finally admits chasing alone was a mistake, and Kaguya tells him to stop blaming himself, so when he hears her, he looks up and breaks into a small, relieved smile. If that creature could slip past him, nobody else would have lasted a second, so she locks in, then spots a scrap of dark fabric in his hand, like it's the first real clue. He studies the cloth, resolves steal fast, and swears he'll catch it next time. Abe beams, suddenly lit up with fresh motivation. Then her praise flusters the swordsman so hard he spins away, sheepishly begging her to please stop. As they step out of the clinic, he clocks their nightmare. Searching for the demons has turned up nothing, maybe because someone's shielding them. Starved and desperate, he's sure they'll hit again soon, and they've got to stop them before more people end up as casualties. He shoots his eyes up and there's Kaguya perched on the next rooftop, humming like she owns the night, so he shouts her name, telling her the only clue he's got is that scrap of cloth still soaked in the demon's blood. Gazing up at her, he takes a crazy long-shot gamble, grabbing Kaguya's attention and begging her to sniff out the claw. He thrust the cloth toward her, begging her to trace the demon by its stench, and reminded her about that earlier promise, only for Kaguya to freeze, staring back in pure confusion. She snapped that sure she could smell demons, but her nose wasn't so razor-sharp that she could be turned into a tracker, and the moment he hinted otherwise, irritation flared in her. She flat-out told him, "I'm not a dog," even while he kept insisting he was counting on her. Her words crushed his hopes, and he slumped in pure frustration, mumbling how his brilliant idea had turned out to be nothing. When she saw his dejection, Kaguya's face snapped into steel, fierce determination blazing. Then bam, cat ears popped onto her head. She swore that if that was what he wanted, she'd do anything to make it happen because that's her job as his wife, and yes, she'd gladly become a cat or even a dog for him. Her wild, zealous offers ramped up. She'd even lick his shoes or strip down right there, and Silva the swordsman couldn't take the heat. Blushing and panicking, he demanded she stop and insisted it was him who'd apologize. Sephirantic exchange got cut short when a newcomer burst in. Charles Orland called out to Silva, "What are you doing?" And she grinned as she told him she'd been hunting for him, proudly bragging that she'd aced her written exams. She shot her a huge thumbs up, truly blown away by what she'd pulled off, while Kaguya kept staring at the newcomer with a razor-sharp, competitive glare. Then she murmured, "Who is that girl?" And right away, Silva felt the rivalry ignite in the air. Charles blinked in shock when Kaguya didn't recognize him, and he blurted that she was just a student at the Heroes Academy. Then Silva cut in fast, claiming Kaguya was his friend, and Kaguya finally nodded along, hesitant. But the moment Charles heard her name, recognition hit like thunder, and he realized he was talking to the legendary special-grade hero. Silva froze for a second, realizing they de-leaked a nobody like her to stand beneath someone with Kaguya's name. Then she shook it off and told Kaguya she had real promise, and that speaking with her was an honor, a rare moment Silva couldn't stop getting excited about. With a flustered look, Charles Orland marches right up to Kaguya as her fingers twitch nervously to her lips. Then she cuts in and demands to know what kind of relationship Kaguya has with Silva. That guy smirks like he's testing Charles, then straight up wonders if Silva is even single, and before Charles can breathe, Silva's face light smashes into a dramatic, overconfident announcement. She's his wife, the most fragile, demure, and beautiful woman on earth, only now Silva panics hard, realizing with icy dread that Charlie's been yanked straight into the rivalry. Relief hit him for a second, like the misunderstanding would finally get sorted. Then the shock landed hard. Charlie's jealousy was creeping in too. Charles just stares like, where do I even start? And she shoots him a skeptical look, so we're only business partners, huh? He panics and blurts that Kaguya is nothing more than a friend, that they're business partners right now, and that her "I'm his wife" claim is pure self-invented nonsense. They press on, saying they'll patrol together, right now, because vampire attacks have been hitting nonstop. This time, Charles's curiosity ignites. She says the vampire case has been buzzing around the academy, then instantly adds that she wants to jump in and help too. Kaguya cuts in with a smug little smirk, firing back like, so what could Silva's friend possibly do? Charles snaps right back she can help, while the whole time Kaguya keeps pressing that word friend, and it throws everyone off. Charles slams her hands together to prove her worth, then a blinding light bursts from the ground around her as she shouts the command that summons her master. When she calls out, a massive spectral wolf claws its way into existence behind her, Fenra Wolf. Kaguya snaps her eyes toward it, and real curiosity lights up her face as she recognizes the summoning spell as pure, fascinating magic. A summoned wolf nuzzles her cheek like it's pure love, and Charles leans in to explain her elemental magic lets her call her contracted spirits anytime. Right then, she introduces Fenrir, the wolf spirit, and says everyone can call her Ruru. As she stood next to her freshly named spirit, Silver couldn't stop smiling and called Rue a total cutie, while he marveled that elemental magic is treated like an unstoppable all-power skill, perfect for fighting and scouting, until the wolf let out a quiet little bark, and that sound instantly pulled Silver's focus. She leaned in and said Ruru's been her loyal companion since they were kids, and Silva couldn't believe it, admitting the spirit usually keeps its distance from everyone, except her. He shot his hand forward, and when the wolf spirit let him touch, shock hit him hard, because he suddenly understood what it meant, remembering that even Alan could only pet Ruru once his bond with Charles had finally hit its absolute peak. The spirit lit up with pure joy, flipping onto its back right away, just like Charles cued at the adorable sight, so Silva grinned and happily rubbed the wolf's belly. Hagia didn't get the same friendly welcome. The wolf spirit dug in its heels and snarled like it was ready to fight, and Hagia just huffed, cheeks puffed with pure annoyance, calling it a rude brute in her head. Charles only laughed, saying that kind of guarded behavior was totally normal, and that Silva was the exception. Pushing past the basics of her spirit's real-world skills, she told them straight up that Ruru could smell a demon's presence and track it like a bloodhound, so once the wolf nodded, the target was basically a done deal. Silva instantly caught the opening, firing back, asking if Ruru could chase a demon's trail using only the scent soaked into a scrap of cloth. She put her theory on the line and dangled a scrap of cloth in front of the wolf, then watched Ruru sniff hard, until it let out a vicious bark, head snapping up as it locked onto the trail, and Charles realized her spirit had struck something real. With the lead locked in, Silva spun to his crew, and when Charles and Kaguya gave him the nod, he barked the order, pursue the quarry right now. Night falls, and in the shadows before two wooden structures, a tight little group gathers close, whispering and prepping for whatever strike comes next. The group tightens up and gets ready. Fenrir Wolf leads the charge as Rue storms up front, with Charles, Kaguya, and Silva right behind, all locking in on their target beneath a sky full of stars. Gaia shatters the silence, demanding Silva's plan and asking if they're all going to infiltrate, and then she whips around to the wolf. Rue, tell me, can the small one come off from there? The beast barks back with pure wild excitement. Charles's voice cracks, his crew's worried sick, asking if it'll really be safe with just the two of them. Silva shuts it down fast, saying a full infiltration is off the table. Only him and Charlie are going inside. Then he snaps his orders to Kaguya, stay outside and stand by. She locks eyes with him and challenges his call, then reminds him, through all the chaos she's caused, that last time he still let their target slip right out of his hands. She sells her point with a confident grin, and he answers, I know, because that's exactly why he's pushing for her to stay out there. He lays out his reasoning way clearer now, then admits her power is a little too over the top because she's just not built for close quarters fights. He says Ruru and Charlie have to be the infiltration team, and someone must stay outside, posted and ready to guard the perimeter. His words melt her defenses, and a blush blooms across her cheeks. She lets out a quiet murmur like, you really know me. Right out of nowhere, she surges upward and hovers behind him with her arms flung wide, striking a dramatic pose, blurting that she's so happy, then immediately panicking to add, no, it's not love, of course not. Silva stares, stunned, while Charles and Ruru just watch without a hint of emotion. From her elevated spot, she steps forward and accepts the role formally, then declares she'll obey his every command, because she's ready to return his love. Inside the building, he lays out the very last step of the plan, wearing pure confidence, and promises his crew that not a single threat will slip by him. Then he whips around to Charles and declares that Ruru will take the lead, and the wolf's spirit greets the idea with an electric, excited roar. He grins at the wolf's fire, convinced Ruru is the real deal, and the spirit snaps back with a sharp bark, ready to charge. Then everything snaps back to Charles. He orders her to stay behind him for her safety, and she glances up, a shy blush creeping across her cheeks. With the formation set, they plunge into the dark, cavernous guts of the structure, sword tight in hand. Silva snaps his gaze away and waves them onward. Ruru takes the lead, sniffing the air like a hunter, as they creep down the wooden corridor, every step braced for danger. That tense silence snaps with a sudden thump. Charles stumbles, and Silva whips back around in shock. She blurts out an apology, cheeks burning as she grips the front of her coat, admitting she got a little scared. Her words hit Silva like a jolt. His heart pounds, his cheeks burn, and he blurts out in his head that of course she's freaking out. She's still just a student at the Heroes Academy. But Charles's fear was just a mask as she clenched the fabric of her coat, because deep down she kept telling herself that Silva was her favorite heroine, wondering if this was all a dream. A quiet moment gets ripped apart. Silva's gaze snaps forward as he fires off, "Ruru, what's wrong?" The wolf spirit freezes in place, snarling and barking with ferocious rage into the dark ahead. He prowls through the dark, scanning for danger, then slams himself between Charlie and whatever's out there, telling Charlie to step back. Charlie listens instantly, and Ruru keeps her eyes locked on the closed door up ahead. In the shadows, a hooded, cloaked figure finally steps out, face swallowed by darkness. It lunges forward with a harsh, strangled cry, and Silva's eyes snap wide because he knows that road. The attacker clamps onto his arm, then slips right past him and slams onto the floorboards, hard, before snapping around and lunging again. The whole thing lands on Silva like a weird, awkward punch, and it feels wrong, but he can't tell if his gut is right or if he's just overthinking. The hooded assassin rockets forward, claws stretched for Silva on the floor. Then the young guard snaps into focus, grips his Alencia sword style, and decides to end this fight right now. Resolve hits and he bursts forward, ripping his blade through the air in a crushing rising arc, shouting upper slash as it slams into the assassin, detonating debris everywhere. With one brutal strike, the blow hurls the assassin straight into the dirt, thud, and Silva, chest heaving, can only stare in stunned disbelief at how fast it all just flipped. The defeated fighter drops without a twitch, and everyone just stares, like, was his enemy really this weak, or did something feel off? Just as Charles Orland shows up in the doorway beside Finner, he cuts into the moment, eyes sharp, as he cautiously asks if he finally managed to bring the assassin down. Silva catches the comment and lets out a tiny embarrassed blush, brushing off the praise and insisting that Slash was nothing, just straight up amazing. A faint rustle snaps his focus, and Charles notices the distraction. He asks if he hears it too. He nods, confirms the sound, and they agree to track down where it's coming from. Moments later, Charles spots something lurking in the dark corridor ahead. "There," she blurts, pointing the way for Silva and Fenrir. She drags them toward a towering pile of huge crates, and from inside, rustling whispers and creaky groans start spilling into the air. They creep to the edge of the crates and peek around, eyes snapping wide in sync, because Charles starts talking and he can't believe what he's seeing. Behind the crates, the shocking truth slams into view. A group of women, bound tight and gagged, huddled in terror, moaning weakly as they strain against their restraints. Silva and Charles freeze in horror as they stare at the scene, and Charles blurts out in disbelief who in the world these people could be, his face caught between full-on shock and burning concern. Right in the middle of all that tension, a bright voice bursts through. Elda, the elite knight captain, shows up with a huge grin and booms out a loud congratulation to Silva for a job perfectly done. He whirls around, shocked to spot his commander, then wham, a smack lands on his head. Elda blurts out, genuinely amazed that he didn't just beat the monster, he saved the captives too. Kaguya, already annoyed, cuts in from the side and reminds the captain she was there as well. With a sharp tongue click, Elda spins toward Kaguya and gives her a curt nod, basically saying, "Yeah, great job." Kaguya just mutters a simple thanks, but her irritation is still written all over her face. Then the captain shoots out her plan. She'll go straight to the higher-ups and report that Kaguya, Charles, and gateguard Silva crushed the vampire incident safely, and Silva forces a shaky smile, demanding she hold up for just a second. He leans in even closer, quietly begging her not to say he's the one who took down the vampire, because he's terrified of dragging unwanted attention into the spotlight, and the way they stare at him, confused by this weird request, says it all. Her confusion flips into a sly grin. She leans in and asks what harm could come from everyone knowing what he's done. Then she smirks and adds that it only gives her another excuse to pull him into the order. Right beside them, a boy watches it all happen, utterly lost. Silver's face flickers with panic, and he flails his hands in a blur as he blurts that she promised to stop hounding him to join the order. Then he shouts his total refusal. Elda pretends she doesn't know, tapping her chin like she's hunting for the memory of that promise, while Silva swears she did. So Elda snaps her throat loud, dodges the whole topic, declares she'll make sure everyone gets rewards worthy of their hard work, and then storms off. He just freezes in stunned disbelief, right when he thought he'd finally slipped out of Elda's relentless push to make him join the Order of the Knights, and boom, she's cornered him again. The captain's completely oblivious to her dismay. She flashes a cheerful grin and shoves a heavy pouch into Charles's hands, declaring it his reward for wiping out the vampire and freeing the captives, while Charles just stands there, a little stunned by the whole moment. He snatched up the pouch, and the first thing on his mind was the victims. He immediately demanded to know how the women they'd saved were doing. Elda steadied him and swore everyone was safe, saying it felt like they'd only been trapped for a short time and none of them had been badly hurt, so they bounced back fast. Then she dropped her chilling theory. The vampire was probably stockpiling them as backup meals. Her words barely touch his worries. His face tightens with a troubled look as he digs into every detail, and that incident suddenly feels horribly wrong. He keeps his thoughts bottled up, staring at what that vampire did. Keeping captives just as emergency food feels way too simple, and he can't believe something that smart would go that crude. So he decides to dig deeper, and he lands on the one place that would know everything, the church. While Silva gets lost in his deductions, Kaguya spots that the knight captain has drifted off too, so she waves right in front of Elda's face and demands to know what's wrong, yanking him out of his daze and that red-hot blush. At the gate, Silva looks totally rattled, stammering that nothing's wrong. Then elite knight Captain Elda snaps him into silence and tells him he can leave right now. He blurts out a quick thank you for all the hard work. He finally takes his leave, trudging off with a heavy, pensive look, clutching a pouch in his hands as Elda slips away in the opposite direction. That troubled look doesn't slip past anyone. Kaguya suddenly shows up at his side, leans in close with a knowing grin, and asks if something's bothering him. Startled, he admits she's figured him out, and Kaguya just smiles like, obviously. After all, he's her husband. He's pressed to spill what's going on in his head, and he admits it. There's this nagging suspicion he can't shake, and he's still stuck right in the middle of sorting it out. She laughs and says his focus is downright adorable, even comparing his thinking face to a detective's. Then she gets him flustered, and he snaps that she needs to stop teasing him. Gaia declares that because their case is officially cracked, she's headed back to recharge her mana, then flashes a cheeky last wish, praying her sweet detective finally finds the answer he's chasing. They split off and guilt hits him hard. He rushes to apologize for dragging her around for days, but she just waves it off and reminds him she's the one who asked to tag along in the first place. Then it hits him, he remembers the reward and points out he still has to hand over her third of the cut. Kaguya waves off the enormous cash like it's pocket change, leans in close, and tells him that just spending time with him is reward enough. She flashes him a teasing goodbye, calling him her cute husband, then vaults over a wall like it's nothing, and she taunts, "Are you embarrassed?" He instantly turns bright red, admitting he'd rather she didn't say things like that so straight to his face. I watched Kaguya slip away, and right before she was gone she teased him with a warning, "Don't even think about cheating on me," and then hit him with a straightforward reminder to use the proper entrance next time. Her voice kept slamming inside his head as he stood there alone, staring at the sky where she vanished. "Cheating," he muttered, and confusion flickered across his face. He shoved the thought aside, bolted down a flight of stone steps, and shouted an apology for keeping them waiting. Down at the bottom of the stairs, Charles Orland lit up with a warm smile and told him it was totally no trouble, then asked about Kaguya, and Charles explained she'd already gone home to handle some business. He even thanked Charlie straight to her face, saying her help cracked the whole case wide open, and when she heard the praise, she just waved it off, claiming she only helped for her own reasons. He insisted no matter what that he was truly grateful, sure her work at the Heroes Academy would show up on her grades, and when he handed her the reward money, he realized nothing could top the sight of her smiling. She shot him a cold look and flat out refused to share the money, thrusting her hand up to silence him. When he demanded to know why, she answered with quiet fire, steady and sure, she'd only stumbled onto the demon, not finished it, and she'd sworn to herself she'd never take a reward until she earned the title of official hero and could crush demons with her own hands. Her conviction hit him like a thunderclap, and he just couldn't find the words, because her noble goal moved him so hard he straight up named it the very best thing about her. Inspired by her grit, he made her a fresh offer. He'd buy her anything she wanted, no questions asked, but he slapped one condition on the table. He wanted something from her in return. When Charles offers it, she shuts her eyes tight, a heavy blush flooding her cheeks, then whispers an apology, saying what she wants can't be gotten with. She keeps going, stopping mid-sentence with that one simple, "you see," and it only makes Silva more clueless. He rubs the back of his head, face burning as he desperately tries to figure out what she meant. She gazes up at him with that soft but unshakable look, then finally blurts it out. She doesn't want anything else except time with him. Silva's pacing stops, sweat beads on his brow as he wrestles with one brutal truth. He can't pick a single outfit. The idea of going on a date with Charlie, his absolute favorite person, feels downright unreal to him because all he really wants is to be with her. At last, he finally throws on a plain shirt, then a knock slams the moment to a stop. Maud stands there, grinning, and begs him to step out for a meal. Lance panics on the spot, blurts out rushed apologies to Maud, and with a flick of his hand, he bolts away, yelling that he's got a date and he can't take the offer. The older guard stands there by himself, date still ringing in his head, staring after the young man who just walked off, pure shock on his face. Meanwhile, Silva burst into the crowded Fountain Square, his nerves screaming, and all he could think was, "I've never done this, no dates, not even in my old corporate life," as panic gnawed at him over how on earth he was supposed to start talking. He frantically scrambles to get his head straight, swearing this can't be some stiff arranged meet, until his spiraling thoughts get yanked to a stop by a familiar voice calling his name and apologizing for being late. His eyes shot wide with shock. There was Charles Orland right in front of him, dressed nothing like usual, wearing a stunning light-colored gown packed with intricate details, her feet set in elegant sandals. She greets him with a bright morning smile, but the second she clocks his face, her grin vanishes. She leans in and asks if he's crying. He wipes the tear off his eye and blurts out that pure joy just knocked the breath out of him, because he never in a million years thought he'd see her in normal, casual clothes, and she answers with a soft, comforting touch. He clenches his fist, overwhelmed, and thinks, "I've got no regrets in my life," while Charles Orland leans over him, staring down with a worried look, muttering that he's acting strange. His weird behavior makes her jump, and she blurts that it looks like his soul is slipping right out of his body until he snaps back into reality. He realizes he barely made it because that shock almost killed him. He forces himself to calm down, rubs the back of his head, and shoots her an apology for scaring her, then he wishes her a good morning. Charles grins warmly and shoots the greeting right back. The awkward silence finally cracked, and he asked what she wanted to do for the day. Charles lit up with the idea of shopping together and teased that a brand new cafe had just opened. Then she smiled and said she was totally down to go anywhere he wanted. They'd locked in their plans, then strode side by side down the city's roaring Main Street. Their shopping trip kicks off in full swing. Charles darts through the clothing store with pure excitement, and Silva flashes her a supportive thumbs up. As the day drags on, Silva's arms get weighed down with a mountain of shopping bags, while Charles grins and snatches up yet another purchase. With his arms stretched wide, he proudly hoists the haul, while Charles clutches her brand new prize to her chest, glowing with pure bliss. After that insane shopping spree, they finally roll up to the new cafe, right under a charming little sign hanging outside the entrance. Silva sits there clutching a steaming cup of coffee, staring earnestly at his companion, Charlie, and straight up asks why she would invite him on a date. He held his breath for her reply, and she leaned in to start talking. She'd been wanting to speak with him alone for ages, and something heavy had been sitting in her mind the whole time. He urged her to spill what was weighing on her, and she finally confessed it all started with your party leader, Alan, right there in the messy process of forming parties and training at the Heroes Academy. Her smile curdled into pure discomfort as she finally blurted out the truth. Alan had been flirting with the women in their party every single day, and it made her feel sick to her stomach. The news slammed into Silva like a punch to the ribs. She churned over it in her head, asking herself if Alan was the reason she was suffering, and whether he was really going around dating those other women too, and then Charles confirmed her worst fears. Alan had been hitting on her as well, and that turned into a full-blown problem. A brutal realization hit him out of nowhere. Alan's moves finally clicked, and it matched the savage harem route from what he learned back then, the kind of path so ruthless it felt almost impossible to survive. He pictured the roots and the brutal rules: boost every heroine's feelings evenly, smash all their confession events together, and if you date just one girl halfway, it all detonates, everyone dumps you. And from her words, he knew Alan had already bled a huge chunk of affection with Charlie. Right now, Charles kept going, and she made it crystal clear. She trusted Alan as a comrade, but the idea of him chasing other girls while he supposedly got a lover made her stomach churn. She kept going, telling me Alan always asked her out on dates, then refused to take no for an answer, and when Silva heard it, she just muttered that it sounded like a total nightmare. Right as Charles started to add more, she blushed hard and clamped a hand over her mouth, and at the same time, guilt hit Silva like a punch. He covered his face, silently apologizing for running that exact route over and over before he ever got reincarnated. She froze mid-sentence, and that sudden silence lit a fire under his curiosity. He couldn't stand not knowing what she was about to say, but she waved it off as nothing, and it still left him burning with questions. He watches as Charles takes a careful sip from her cup, her eyes drifting shut, and she murmurs that a maiden's heart is nothing but trouble, then admits she's hiding secrets even she can't bring herself to tell him. Her words hit him like a punch. He tumbles backward out of his chair, eyes wide with shock, and he just stares at the ceiling as his mind reels around an impossible thought. That clatter snaps Charles' attention. She leans in with a worried face, asking what's wrong. Then he starts to lift his gaze off the floor, and before he can answer, a fresh voice slices through the air. Alan's voice hits first. He strides into view with that kind of confident menace, like the air itself goes quiet. Two young women flank him, Margaret Naras and Renaa Cassius, both labeled as heroine candidates, and Alan blurts, "Fancy meeting you here." What? His sudden pop-in totally startles Charles, and he blurts out what he and his friends are even doing here, when Renaa, grinning like it's no big deal, cheerfully declares that the three of them are on a date. Then she leans in close to Charles, bright as sunshine, smiling to remind him she'd invited herself to tag along too, just the other day. From his seat, Silva watched everything unfold and took a slow sip from his cup, quietly clocking that these had to be the two girls Alan was chasing right now. He remembers everything from his past life. Renaa and Margaret are basically easy wins, because in the game's story they don't just fall for Alan, they shove him toward building a harem, then even help him reel in other women. He studies the Academy's social power games and realizes how brutally hard it is to swap party members, and for Charles, that means being stuck in a painfully awkward mess, face to face with the leader's other love interests. Alan's eyes sweep past Charles and lock onto the stranger parked at her table, and he shoots her a sharp, questioning look, then demands to know who he is. Charles, with a weary expression, introduces the man beside her as Silva, a mere gatekeeper. She then adds, with a hint of defiance, that they are also on a date. He freezes in shock, suddenly feeling a massive surge of mana blasting out from the gatekeeper, and his mind spirals. What on earth could this possibly mean? His confusion snaps into fury, and he storms up to Charles, grilling her about why she rejected his offer just to go on a date with someone so forgettable, only for Charles to fire back, sharp and loud, calling him out for being rude to Silva. She decides to bolt, dragging Silva with her and telling him to go somewhere else, while a shadow crashes over Alan's face as he watches, pleading with Charles not to chase after the gatekeeper. He stares at the scene, and a grim truth hits him like a punch. Charles is dating this man. His mind spirals straight into something darker, and he snaps that the gatekeeper has to be a demon. Silva and Charles both react instantly, stunned out of their minds. He hammers his accusation and links Silva to the fresh rumors of a demon snatching women, then declares Silva's the real culprit, plotting to trick Charles and drag her into captivity. His companions shoot the theory down, then instantly agree with it. Renaa blurts out that it fits perfectly, since there's no other reason Charles would slam Owen's offer shut. Margaret throws in her own verdict, and the moment she says it, it lands hard. The demon must have fried her mind with a brainwash. She cries out in frustration, insisting she hasn't been brainwashed. She desperately asks why they refuse to understand how she truly feels. Hearing her distress, Silva looks on with concern, quietly saying her name. He twists her plea into proof of a mind control spell, then jabs a finger in her direction and roars at Silva, wretched demon, promising he'll never let that toy near someone as precious as him. Silva can only clench his teeth, furious and trapped. The heroines rush in to stop it, and Alan and Margaret yank Charles's arms to pull her back, only for her to fight and sob, screaming that she won't stay there. Alan, eager to show off, complains about how brainwashing is running wild, totally blind to what's actually happening. Silva's mind rang with those accusations, and the hero he used to worship turned into something pathetic right in front of him. Then rage hit so hard his grip crushed the teacup, shattering it with a violent snap as shards skittered across the table. That sickening crack of porcelain snapped everyone's attention. Alan and his crew spun around, Margaret gasped and blurted out Silva's name, and Alan turned just in time to see Silva rise to his feet, radiating a full-on menacing presence. With a sharp move, Alan yanked out his weapon and demanded to know what Silva was up to, but Silva stayed cool and lifted a hand to shut Charles down, then stared Alan dead in the face and said he'd never realized what a thick-skulled bonehead Alan really was. Charles stared at him, worried, as Alan admitted he'd planned to stay silent, but his own words still lit a fuse in him. Then Silva's whole mood flipped. She turned to Charles with a soft smile, tossed her hair like a curtain, and apologized for letting Alan crawl under his skin. Then he squared up to Alan and his crew again, jaw set hard, and said there's no way he could hand Charlie to them with the way they're acting right now. Alan's face contorted with fury at the refusal, screaming that he didn't need Silva's permission, while Rina Cooley, right beside him, just watched Alan run his mouth off. Alan's taunt lit a fire under him. He swore he'd drag her back by force, so he lunged forward. Silva's eyes sharpened and she stepped up to meet the challenge. Honestly, he wasn't wrong to think it. As his opponent charged, a bright memory of Charles and Alan's happier days slammed into his mind, and he finally got it. The Alan she used to know would have understood every ounce of her feelings. He wasn't about to deny the threat in that aggressive person's face, but this new Alan did one unforgivable thing, and he couldn't let it slide. Her own outcome hardened in her bones, and she swore she'd never let something like this unfold. Alan's eyes blazed with unstoppable intensity as he snapped that a world where Charlie couldn't smile was absolutely not allowed. That outburst had Charles staring in worry, muttering Silva's name under his breath, and then Silva, still in his casual clothes, stepped forward and calmly said he'd handle Alan himself and set him straight, but it only lit a new fire under Alan. He snarled, called Silva a cocky demon, and swore he'd tear him apart with his blade. Still unfazed, Silva's face twisted into a cold, menacing grin. Then he clenched his fist and dark energy surged around him as he snapped at Alan not to underestimate a troublesome nerd, the same guy who's caused trouble since his past life, and now the two just stared each other down, the air crackling with raw, unspoken aggression. On the massive training grounds of the Heroes Academy, several key figures huddle together inside the premises, like something huge is about to go down. Alan barrels into Silva and blurts out, shocked that he picked this exact spot for their showdown. He thrusts his sword out and grins, saying that right here he can finally unleash everything, no distractions, no limits, while Alan smirks right back, warning Silva that this choice is about to wreck his world. Charles Orland whips his gaze to Silva before they clash, and guilt floods her face. She blurts out an apology, convinced this disaster is all her fault. He tells her she owes no apology, then his eyes darken like a switch flips, and he snaps that Alan is the one who should be apologizing. On the sidelines, Margaret and Eris snarl, bragging that Alan's skill and raw power can erase a lowly demon like Silva in a blink, while Rena Cassius hovers right in front of him, impatiently pushing Alan to finish it fast so they can get back to their day. A blazing aura ignites around his companion's body, and Alan snaps that the fight's basically finished. Once he wins, Charles will fall for his strength all over again. Charles turns his head, visibly squirming. Silva's face tightens with ruthless rage, and he swears he'll crush this guy and force him to apologize to Charlie. She turns toward him and admits Alan is truly strong, then tells Silva she wants him to win and plans to cheer him on. Silva smiles, drinks in her support, and promises her she's got nothing to worry about. Encouraged by Silva's own grit, he squares up to Alan, and Alan needles him, asking if he's really ready, and whether he truly plans to fight in that trashy gear. Silva doesn't even flinch, lifts his sword and shouts, "Come on then." He thrusts his plain sword out in front, staring Alan down with rock-steady resolve, claiming this gear alone was more than enough to handle him, and watching as Alan just sneered at the challenge. Alan roared for him to keep dreaming, then he lunged, his blade flaring with a wild burst of energized light, but the gatekeeper was quicker, slipping sideways and nullifying the strike like it was nothing. Alan's eyes blew wide with pure disbelief. He dodged it. His opponent's shot cracked the moment open. Alan barely had time to blink before Silva slipped into his guard, fist cocked tight, ready to slam it into him. That punch slammed into Alan's forearm with a brutal thud. His block held, but the impact still rattled him, and he clenched his teeth as he felt just how deadly that power was. The blast of his own hit kicked him backward, sliding across the dirt in a shockwave of impact, and Alan just stared, utterly stunned, wondering if that insane strength was magic supercharged into him. With a new truth lighting up in his eyes, he shot forward and jabbed an accusing finger, declaring that Silva wasn't just any gatekeeper. With a dismissive sigh, Silva hurled his sword onto the ground, clang metal ringing in the air. Then he snapped at Alan that he'd already made himself clear. "You're nothing special, just a gatekeeper." Alan just stared, stunned, trying to figure out what on earth Silva was trying to pull. He cracked his knuckles and flashed a confident grin, because against Alan, he swore his bare hands were more than enough. Then Alan erupted in rage, roaring at him to never underestimate him. Rage blazing, he surged forward again, blade carving a wide arc. Alan dodged under the swing and suddenly found himself face to face. He snapped his warning to clench his teeth right before the fist slammed into Alan's jaw, the whole hit thudding out like a dull punch to the bones. That punch detonated in Alan's chest, launching him through the air like a wrecking ball. His lips cracked with a sharp cry of shock and pain as the blow knocked him down hard and left him utterly overwhelmed. Charles Orland and Rena Cassius gaped in pure disbelief, eyes wide as the onlookers could barely process what they'd just seen, while Renaa blurted in shock, tears flying. Their shock was dead on. Alan got blasted off his feet by that one brutal hit, slamming into a far wall with a heavy thud. Renaa couldn't believe it either, because he went down clean in a single strike. Just nearby, a dark-haired man in a cloak dropped to one knee, clutching his sword and cursing how everything had suddenly turned. In the crater, Mercenaries burst toward him, demanding he pull himself together, then snapped into a healing spell, summoning comfort to stitch his wounds back up. Meanwhile, Silva, the one who landed the hit, just flashed a satisfied grin, like the whole clash did him some good, and then a quick worry flickered through his head. What if he'd gone too far? While the enemy's crew had their eyes elsewhere, the dark-haired man clenched through anguish and rage. Renaa and Charles rushed in to prop him up, their worried faces screaming the same fear. He shrugged off their help and fixed his eyes on Charles. When Charles asked if he'd come for Alan, he cracked with grim resolve. He wasn't here for Alan, he was here to drag Charles back. From across the courtyard, Silva snapped back and started to argue his point. Then he froze when Charlie said, "Well, Charlie isn't your..." His rant got yanked away by a furious roar. "Shut you, P." The dark-haired man bellowed, face twisted with rage, and those words were fueled by strong love. His furious words boomed as a shadowy, demon-faced figure cackled behind him, sword thrust straight ahead, and he swore, "Demon Lord, I swear to my comrade I'll beat you." Then he dropped his voice, eyes pinning Silva in a cold, razor-sharp stare, and with a quiet menace he slipped in one unsettling thought, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He speaks like he's been chosen for destiny, feeling every heartbeat of his comrades, and he swears they're bound by a love so fierce it can't be shattered. From a different corner of the world, Silva watches everything explode in real time, and yeah, you can tell the story feels a little generic at first, but the love for these classic tales shines through. The dialogue crackles with passion as people gush over how cool Alan is and push him to keep moving forward. Suddenly, Silva's voice slices through the air. He jabs an accusing finger at the dark-haired man and screams at the womanizer to shut up before he keeps spitting that damn nonsense, and both the guy and Charles jump hard at the outburst. The dark-haired man glares, seething, then snaps back that Silva's just talking nonsense, and he vows he's going to become a hero. He keeps shouting his heartfelt vow, standing his ground and demanding. Charles has to stay right by his side. Silva locks in a cold stare, and the moment he clocks it, he realizes, this guy still doesn't get the whole picture. The dark-haired man snaps away from the interruption and locks back onto Charles, begging her to hold on as he promises he'll get her back in a flash. Yet Charles stays quiet, head bowed like she's bracing for the storm. She finally lifts her eyes, but not toward him. Her stare is somewhere far away as she shouts to Alan, demanding he listen. Her voice snaps Alan's attention. He whips around, hope and confusion crashing across his face, and when she says she's made up her mind, everything shifts. Right before she can go on, another woman strides up and clamps a hand on Alan's arm, locking eyes with him as she declares, "Starting today, I'm done with your party." Alan's face twists in pure, stunned disbelief. Silva watches from his spot as everything erupts in chaos, while he and Charles sit there completely stunned, mouths hanging open like they can't believe he just vanished. He even sports a faint flush on his cheeks. As the chaos keeps escalating, Charles snaps her focus onto Silva, telling him, right to his face, that thanks to him, her feelings finally make sense, and she's ready to grind her way into a hero, even if she has to walk away from her current party. Before she can finish, a dark-haired man storms in, furious, demanding to know what she's talking about, so Charles doesn't flinch and orders him to listen. He gapes in disbelief, his voice trembling as he swears they were meant to share a bond, but Charles stays icy calm, cutting him off to insist that nobody's controlling her. His whole body freezes, he can't even find words. With a tired, irritated look, she snaps that he should stop it and give it a rest already. Refusing to swallow her words, he clenched his teeth and blurted a wild promise. He'd win her as his lover and rise as the strongest hero, period. His eyes snapped to Silva, like a silent blame pinned to him for every twist that led here. Then roar, he slammed a skill loose, screaming for his soul bond to activate as a crushing burst of energy flared and glowed around him. The spell snaps to life and rockets toward Alan and Charles, drowning them in crackling light. They yelp in shock as the power hammers through their bodies. From his viewpoint, Silver clocks exactly what kind of spell this is, while the dark-haired man glares straight ahead, feeling his own mana get drained to feed the bond he just sealed. He gets the spell's mechanics down to the last detail. This technique turns the bonds he shares with his comrades into a special kind of mana, and its strength rises or falls on two things: how many close allies he's got and how deep their bond runs. And yeah, the more lovers you stack, the harder it hits. So Silver clocks it instantly. This guy didn't just stumble into it. He hunted more comrades, forged deeper connections, and did it all just to learn this exact spell. That realization makes Silva gag on disgust because the truth hits hard. That man is beyond saving. His suspicions snap into place when the dark-haired guy smirks and exposes it all. His obsession with Charles was nothing but a weapon used to crank up his spells. Suddenly, a massive blast erupts and hurls the dark-haired man flying backward, and Silva's face tightens because the scene screams familiarity, like that one time he chose the wrong path. Even with the man down, Charles stares on, worried, and warns Silva to stay sharp, because her old comrade's mana supply is ridiculously enormous. Silver shoots a hard truth into the air. Real life has no do-overs, just consequences, and with the stakes roaring, he turns to the group with a confident grin, promising he'll crush this fast. His declaration sparks rage in the dark-haired man, and he roars that he'll become the strongest hero and save everyone, while Charles watches, disgusted, asking how he can preach saving after he's caused so much pain, and shuts down his whole claim to heroism. Silva just recognizes the man for what he is, pure desire. Rage bursting through him, the man snaps his fury at Silva, screaming that he needs all their power to pull off his plan. Yet Silva just lifts his sword and agrees, unbothered, until a sudden surge of energy explodes and slams the dark-haired man backward with a sharp cry of pain. As his opponent staggers, Silva's face turns cold and ruthless. He says that since he lives in this world and bleeds for Alan, he can't forgive anyone who would break his favorite's heart, and with that vow to make the man pay, he sets himself to unleash a secret Zalantia sword-style technique. He screams the attack's name, Blue Sky, like it's the last battle cry he's got. The swordsman rockets ahead in a blur, unleashing his technique so fast that shimmering particles rip through the air behind him. His blade carves through the air like a lightning strike, whistling as it tears forward. A brilliant burst of energy explodes from the strike, and Charles throws up her hands to shield her eyes as the shockwave slams Alan and the dark-haired man down, both of them tumbling across the ground. Standing over his fallen opponent, Silva snaps at him to learn how to feel for others. So when the dark-haired man hits the ground and stares up in horror, terror crashes in as he realizes his one true bond has been twisted. A brutal realization hits him like a truck. His sword lies in pieces beside him, and he crumples to his knees, totally wiped out. He stayed sprawled on the ground, eyes drifting like he'd already checked out, while Silva behind him slumped with a tired sigh. Yeah, the fight was over, but the loser wasn't listening to the world. In a cracked, fading voice, he addressed someone you couldn't see and muttered, "You've really let me down, Hero Alan." A sharp voice slices through the training yard tension, and Charles Orland strides forward, barking that he wants to know what everyone's doing. Then he swings his attention to Alan, questioning why he's stirring up trouble on his day off, while Silva freezes in panic, realizing the woman in front of him is right. Reeves' name throws him into a full mental spiral. He frantically tries to remember whether anyone with that name has ever shown up in the game he knows, praying she's not just some throwaway scrap character. But as he's stuck there, Charles Orland glares down at Alan, her face burning with fury. Alan stammers out an answer to her unspoken question, jabs a finger at Silva, and tells her they believe the man is a demon. Rage drains away into sharp, worried thinking. She lifts a gloved hand to her chin and whispers the accusation like it's haunting her, then asks, "That guy's a demon, right?" Right before she can think it through, Silva explodes into action, shouting with full conviction and swearing, 100%, that he's no demon. Denial gets cut off the moment the elite knight captain arrives. She steps right up to Silva and calls out that he's gotten himself into some serious trouble. Then she explains she was pulled here by a massive surge of insane mana, and she can't believe she found him exactly in the middle of it. Silva looks totally fed up and fires back that the feeling is mutual. Then he turns to the commander and demands to know what she's doing at the academy. She grins and says she's here for a meeting about the combat practicals coming to the academy, and she adds that the Order of Knights will be there too, just in case anything goes wrong, while Silva listens, and understanding lights up his face. As the group strides away, his mind snaps back to the game's main story, right to that moment during the practicals, when the Academy's hero candidates got ambushed by level 3 low-level demons. He remembers this is Alan's first real fight, then a flash of Alan and that dark-haired man battling side by side hits his mind, but one scary thought slips in and won't let go still. The elite knight captain flashed a radiant smile at him and called him by name, Silva, then teased him with a grin, asking if it was really admirable to handle a hero candidate like that. Her words hit like a punch as she playfully snatched Alan and told him off for bullying the weak, because that wasn't him at all. Silva froze, stunned and scrambling for words, while the captain looked on, baffled like he couldn't stop thinking, did she just? What? Embarrassment snapped into pure fury, and Alan yanked himself free, his expression hardening as he swore that one day he'd crush Silva with his own hands, a vow Silva couldn't shake as something that somehow didn't fit a real protagonist with. After that declaration, he spun on a dime and bolted, While everyone yelled for him to stop, Alan didn't even glance back, just sprinted into the distance. As Alan vanished from sight, the captain snapped her gaze back to Silva, and Silva's eyes said she already knew. Alan looked like he despised him with every breath, while Silva could only break into a cold sweat, realizing just how much history had just exploded between them. Then her eyes snapped to the other young woman nearby, and she called out, "Hey, are you Charles?" Charles shot a stunned look at the captain and demanded how he somehow knew her name, and the captain admitted she'd been hearing plenty about her from Silva, especially how she helped crack the vampire case. So Charles praised Silva like always, and the captain immediately pressed, asking if she was a student at the Heroes Academy too. She kept praising the gate guard, swearing Silva was the strongest soldier she'd ever met, and saying that just standing beside him could skyrocket your skills. Blushing hard, Charles stayed quiet at first, then nodded and admitted, "Yeah, I think the same." What? Charles cleared his throat, flustered, while Silva scratched the back of his head, mortified, and that sweet praise sparked a weird shared awkwardness. Yet the captain absolutely loved it, bursting into a hearty laugh. Charles forced her breathing steady, pushed herself forward, and apologized for cutting in, then declared it was time to meet Ms. Elda, switching to formal talk as she addressed Captain Barney. Elite Knight Captain Elda shoots off a quick apology, then heads out, waving goodbye to both Silva and Charles, while Silva rubs the back of his head and sheepishly apologizes too, like he's worried he caused trouble. As she strides away, she suddenly slams on the brakes, spins back with a wicked grin, and swats off his apology, saying it was no trouble at all. Her face lights up with gleeful fury as she jabs a finger straight at Silva, yelling that he's the troublemaker. So now, for kicking up all this chaos, he's getting thrown into the Heroes Academy combat practicals as punishment. Then she roars with laughter like there's absolutely no escape, and Silva is left completely stunned. He's left completely stunned, the order drilling into his mind as his whole body tightens with confusion, unable to wrap his head around what he's just been told to do. Stuck trying to read the chaos, Charles snaps his gaze to him with raw remorse, and she rushes to apologize for dragging him into all this, owning up that her trespassing was the real cause from the start. He immediately lanes in, reassures her, and shuts the guilt down, telling her she has nothing to apologize for at all, because every single thing he did was his own choice. His face softens the second he meets her eyes, and he tells her she can finally walk out of the hero's party with zero regrets, then adds with total honesty that he's genuinely thrilled for her. He steels himself and replays everything in his head. Charles has basically been cut out as the heroine of the main story now, and he can't shake the feeling that she won't matter in the big plot from here on out, so he's left wondering if her dream of becoming a hero will ever actually come true. A sudden thought hits him: if Charles isn't in the main story anymore, does that mean no matter how deep he gets, she just won't show up? He can't even picture a future where she's totally gone. He glances over at the unsuspecting Charles, and a sudden blush blooms across his face, hope and panic battling at once as he wonders if his involvement might not actually ruin everything for her. He strides beside Charles, heart pounding, mind sprinting, and he chews himself out in his head. He should be thrilled just having his favorite person right there, yet he thanks her out loud anyway, and you can practically see the inner war on his face. She replies with a surge of fresh determination, telling him that because of him, she's hardened her resolve to become a hero, no matter how she has to do it alone. Her face softens the second she looks at him, a shy blush creeping across her cheeks. Then she starts to ask if that day ever arrives and she's a real, full-fledged hero, will he? Their perfect moment gets slammed apart by a kid sobbing, so loud it chills the air. They spin around and find a little boy crying all alone. Silva rushes over, asks if he's okay and where his parents are, and the boy wipes his tears and says, "They're not here." What? Then Silva demanded to know where the boy lived, so the kid swallowed hard and said, "I don't have a mom or a dad anymore, my home is the church," and it completely blindsided Silva. Tears burned in his eyes as the boy pushed on. He'd been at the priest's place, running around outside and playing with everyone. He ends his tale saying the others vanished off somewhere, leaving him stuck behind. Then Silver clicks instantly. The boy wasn't in trouble, he'd just been separated from his group. As soon as Charles hears that, worry flashes across his face. He tells Silva to take the kid to the church, and Silva doesn't hesitate at all, agreeing right away. He drops to the boy's level, flashes a warm smile, and asks his name, Addy. Then Silva grins and offers to haul him home on his back, and Addy's eyes instantly blow wide with pure shock and joy. With Addy riding securely on his back, Silva strides through the town streets, and the boy beams as Charles keeps pace beside them, her face lit up with a warm, happy smile while she watches the two of them. He slings the small boy on his back and marches alongside Charles down the stone path, while Addy, soaring above, glows with pure delight. Addy shoots ahead, blurts out that they've hit the church, Then a flash of insight slams into Silva as the side wall sparks his mind. Maybe this place is where they hunt for vampire info. At the church doors, a priest bursts out like he's been chased by fear, and when he shouts Addie's name, his face splits between panic and pure relief. He's so grateful the boy's safe, then he immediately asks if those two strangers returned with him. He drops to one knee, a soft smile lighting up his face, and he introduces himself, Dan, the kid's guardian. Charles checks in with Addie, and Addie lights up, bursting with heartfelt gratitude to both Mr. Silva and Ms. Charles for bringing him back safe. Dan steadies himself and blurts out how grateful he is, his face full of worry, because when the other kids told him Addie had been separated from them, he swears he almost had a heart attack. The boy spits back in fury, yelling that the others were the ones who got separated, not him. Then Dan calmly steps in, telling him he still caused everyone to panic and he has to apologize, and Addie finally gives in with a reluctant nod. Silva watches the scene and clocks that Dan is a genuinely kind priest, one who knows exactly how to discipline a kid without crushing the spirit. That convinces him Dan might actually be willing to answer his questions. His gaze snaps back to his guests and Dan pushes, insisting he'll thank them properly, more formal, no shortcuts. Silva starts to brush it off, then halts mid-rejection, eyes narrowing like he's clocked the moment. He leans in and tells Dan there's something he actually wants to ask. Surprised but not opposed, Dan promises he'll answer if he can, then turns to Charles and asks if she can spare a moment for this, and when they nod in agreement, Dan ushers them inside the church, away from everything outside. He drops into a chair at the table, flustered to the bone by the sudden, serious barrage of questions. Leaning in, he snaps, Silva, what do you want to know exactly? Silva blurts that he was praying the priest could teach him everything he knows about vampires, and the word hits the room. Dan jerks with clear shock, repeating, vampires. His surprise snaps into focus and he rushes to apologize, then demands answers. So tell me, Silva, are you after the vampires from old myths or the one from that recent incident? Silva grins and says he wants the whole story. Silva lays it out, he's convinced the vampire mess is settled, but that case still gnaws at him. The priest sizes him up for a beat, then demands, are you a knight? Silva answers with a straight-up nod, yeah, if it helps. The priest's confirmation hits like a heavy blow. He drops his gaze, clamps his hands together, and whispers that he understands. Silva watches from the side, his face giving away nothing. After a beat of deep thought, Dan snaps his gaze upward and offers to tell Silva what he's learned about them from the legends of his cleric days. Then he asks if she'll mind hearing the details. He begins his tale, recounting the ancient lore. The moniker vampire, he explains, is a title for demons from legends, said to have evolved from vampire bats. Their power is so immense that fables tell of them leveling entire cities to the ground. The more blood a vampire drinks, the deadlier its strength gets because every drop just fuels it. So when one monster feeds on 10 people, it becomes so terrifyingly powerful that it takes multiple top-tier heroes just to bring it down, and even then, it's still a brutal fight. Silva adds one last chilling detail. Fables claim vampires could summon minions too. Then he watches closely as Silva repeats the word, stunned, like the meaning might finally snap into place. He leans in as Priest Dan clasps his hands and keeps talking, and Dan spells it out. Minions are just humans injected with vampire blood, and that lore says it grants them near-true vampire powers, plus an instinct that drives them to hunt and attack other humans. He swallows the grim news, then turns to Dan and thanks him for every detail, while Charles Orland clocks the dark look on his face and calls out his name, her voice heavy with worry. Dan tells them they can come back anytime with more questions, then his eyes drop to his own hand, burned just recently, and he asks real quietly if Silva's hand got injured too. The moment hangs there. Dan quietly absorbs every word the priest says, then he shoots one last worried look and urges the priest to take care of himself. Silva nods and promises he will. Once they're finally outside, he swivels toward Charles and blurts out an apology for dragging her along for so long. She waves it off with a soft smile and reminds him, I'm the one who invited you out. She straight up asks if their talk was really about the vampire case, and he nods, confessing that ever since he wiped out that one demon, this unsettling feeling has been haunting him. His thoughts snap back to that hooded figure he battled, and he blurts out a wild new theory. Maybe the creature he just beat wasn't a demon, it was a human twisted into a minion. And if he's right, the master vampire is still out there, hiding somewhere in the city. Yanked out of that chilling realization, he snaps back when Charles calls his name, then apologizes for zoning out. Spotting how late it is, he offers to walk her home. When she asks if he's really sure, he swells his chest with confidence and declares that escort duty is just as much part of a soldier's job, and the moment she sees how sincere he is, her face softens, then a shy blush creeps up her cheeks. As she locks eyes with him, she realizes she never got the chance to tell him what she wanted today, but somehow, she's okay letting this moment slip by for now. She stands in front of a grand, towering building, her face calm but full of thoughts, staring into the distance while one private question burns in her chest. Will she ever spot the perfect moment to tell him everything she's been holding back? Elsewhere, Dan the priest held up a ragged sheet of dark fabric, one lone round hole ripped clean through it, and his grim face tightened as sweat slid down his temple while he stared at the clue, brow locked in fierce concentration. Standing at his post before that massive, fortified gate that guards the silver calls, he snaps his eyes up and yells for the next person in line, quill and clipboard in hand, then glances back at the never-ending queue, wondering how deep that line really goes. He stares at the mess and realizes today's the day he's working the southern gate for the first time, and it's busier than he ever imagined, because with staffing shortages everywhere from non-stop demon incidents, he's got to lock in and do his gatekeeping job to the fullest. A heavy unease crawls over him because the demon cases are exploding in numbers, and that vampire incident from earlier feels way too familiar. It's playing out like the game's main storyline, except now he can't shake the sense that their whole plan just hit a snag. His eyes flare wide with dread. He can't stop the thought. Is this all his fault? Did he get pulled in and tangled up in the main storyline? His thoughts get ripped apart the second a sharp voice yells, "Hey," and he snaps his head up from his work, totally startled. A second guard, spiky, light-colored hair and all, stepped in and snapped at him for drifting off, barking that he should get back to work, and Silva, flustered on the spot, hurriedly agreed while calling him Mr. Crow. He clocks Crow as the veteran soldier guarding the southern gate, and grudgingly admits to himself that his superior is seriously good-looking. So yeah, that's the problem, but... As Silva checks the traveler's papers, his personality basically falls flat, while Crow leans in, showers the young woman with compliments and asks for her name. She blushes and tells him, "I'm Yulia." He takes her hand, blurting out how much he adores her name, then asks why she's come all the way to the royal capital. Yulia smiles and says she landed a job as a staff member at a flower shop in the shopping district. With that final flirt, his hand still pulling her back, he grins and tells her she's as pretty as a flower, while Silva, from the side, seethes with irritation, furious that his coworker is flirting with girls while they're on the job. Irritated, he snaps at his colleague to pick up the pace. Then Crow shoves the newcomer away, barking that he doesn't take orders from anyone, while the merchant just presses forward, demanding his permit. Rage simmers inside him at Crow's nerves, and he writes him off as nothing, just trash, just a background extra like he thinks he is too, while he bemoans how badly he misses working with Maud Dai until a sharp voice cuts through the crowd, demanding a gatekeeper. The voice is instantly familiar to him, filling him with a sense of unease. The woman, Commander Elda, approaches the gate, announcing that she is searching for somebody. Crow immediately blurts out flattery, gushing over the commander's beauty and volunteering to help, until she cuts him off cold, saying she's hunting for a gatekeeper named Silva, and the second he realizes he's the one she wants, Silva tries to vanish before anyone notices. His escape doesn't even last. Commander Elda clocks him in a heartbeat, yanks him by his uniform, and blurts that she needs a favor. She's borrowing him and demands he rush with her to the knight's headquarters at once. A bewildered Crow is left frozen at the gate. Moments later, inside the commander's office at the knight headquarters, Elda cuts straight to the chase. She says the vampire mess is finally over, but now a kidnapping case has burst onto the scene, and every victim she names is a woman with only one shaky clue. Reports of a suspicious figure in a black cloak. The moment that black cloak dimension snaps shut, a dark memory rips open in Silva's mind, just a flash of a brutal, cloaked presence that feels like it wants him dead. He blurts his suspicion to the commander, swearing this kidnapping is tied to the vampire case, and when she challenges him, reminding him he already beat the vampire, Silver insists the one he faced felt weirdly weak, like it wasn't even fighting for real. He breaks down his theory again, remembering that vampires can forge thralls, and then he lands on the terrifying thought. The thing he killed might not have been the master vampire at all. Maybe it was just one of its loyal little minions. Commander grimly nods like it hurts. Yeah, the real vampire is still out there. Silva's face tightens with regret as he clenches his fist, crushed by the thought that if he'd spotted the truth earlier, he might have stopped this whole new nightmare before it even started. He snaps into action and accepts Commander Elda's request for help, so fast it throws her off, because with vampires in the mix the stakes have only gotten worse, and she can't believe his sudden willingness, since he's usually the one who fights back against this. With a determined grin, he insists there's nothing strange about it. He just can't stand by while someone else cleans up a mess he believes he caused. Elda's face brightens seeing how driven he is, so she stands up and shoves a scroll into his hands, telling him it could be a key to his search, and he stares at the thing like it might crack the whole mystery. He unrolls the scroll and boom, a long list spills out. Elda tells him it's the casualty report from the vampire case. She points out that beyond the girls he rescued, other captives were taken too, and now they're sitting in the hospital. Then she urges him to rush to the clinic. Maybe they can give him real answers. Silva doesn't waste a second and demands the clinic's location right away. Elda tells him the clinic is the Rachel one, tucked out on the edge of town, and the name hits Silva like a punch to the chest, shocking him wide awake. She keeps going, calling the clinic's doctor Rachel Forsard, one of Bria's beatable characters, and yeah, she's a little trouble too, but Elda insists that getting closer to her pays off fast. You can snag healing items for way cheaper. With determination in his eyes, he nods, he's got it, and he races there right away. Elda grins like, good, I'm counting on you. He barrels into the clinic, and the memory of his last visit, when he saved those captive girls, hits him like a wave. The moment he steps inside, that rotten stench punches him in the face, so he instinctively clamps a hand over his nose and mouth. He shouts for Miss Rachel, asking if she's here, and his eyes sweep the room, spotting shelves packed with healing supplies and medicine. A woman with reddish-brown hair and glasses steps out, fiddling with her frames, and asks what he needs, right away checking if he's hurt or sick, only to realize he's not. Silva snaps his gaze up at her, and for a split second recognition sparks while he scrambles to remember where he's seen her. He's stunned she even remembers him, because they've only crossed paths once before. Then Rachel Forsert snaps into it, confirming who he is and recalling him as the gatekeeper who ushered in the girls the demons attacked. She keeps that sly grin plastered on her face and tells him, of course I remember you, like it's obvious, because he's been hanging with a top-tier hero, or as she calls him, the monster. He snaps at her for calling Kaguya a monster, but Rachel barrels right past his protest. She leans in, exhales a cloud of smoke, and asks his name like it's the only thing that matters. He steps forward and says, I'm Silva, and the second Rachel locks eyes on him, her gaze flicks over his body. She calls it amusing. Then she coldly orders him to strip, leaving him completely speechless. Stuck on the request, he blurts out why, then Rachel cuts straight through and tells him, if he wants her to listen, he has to start by undressing first. As he grumbles and yanks off his shirt, a tiny fairy-like creature perched beside Rachel whispers that this is just one of the doctor's nasty little habits, because apparently she can tell exactly what kind of person someone is just by looking at their body. She leans in for a closer look, clocking his build, and realizing he's the kind of guy who can make himself look skinny, even when he's fully clothed. After a beat of dead silence, she tells him to slip his clothes back on. She's finally got a solid read on who he is. He yanks his shirt back into place and can't help but stare like, wait, how could a quick look possibly tell you anything about me? What? She shrugs off his doubts and drops her deduction like a mic. He's not a knight, he's a soldier. When he agrees, she just smirks and says his body is downright amusing. Her amused thoughts curdled fast as she mused that she'd dig into it later, by dissecting it right to her own voice. That idea made Silva's skin crawl, but the little creature quickly snapped in that the doctor was just joking. He stands there awkward and stiff, facing Rachel Forsard, fully dressed now, and she wastes no time firing straight at him. What does he need from her? He answers without hesitating, saying he wants to investigate the survivors from the vampire case. She eyed him like she didn't buy it, insisting the case was done, and that she'd already handed everything to the knights, yet he didn't flinch. He laid out his logic. Some vampires might still be breathing, and the only way to know is to question the survivors himself. Her whole mood flips in an instant. She shoots up from her seat, tells him to wait, and then her face brightens with instant understanding as she agrees to his request. She leads him to a room with a bar door where a young girl recoils in fear at the sight of him. He understands her terror, assuming she's had a terrifying experience. Rachel steps in to reassure the child, identifying her as the one he needs to speak with. She tells the girl not to worry, explaining that Silva is not a bad person, but a soldier of justice who protects people. He drops to one knee to lock eyes with her, swearing right there and then that he'll protect her and everyone else, and that he'll hunt down the villains who put her through this nightmare, and the force of his promise hits her hard, so she nods with fresh grit and agrees to cooperate. As she tightens her fists with pure resolve, his eyes snap to one of her hands. He points at it and demands, what happened to it? Up close you can spot a weird, webbed bruise crawling across the back of her hand, and he clocks that strange shape, wondering if it's really just a bruise. She leans in and asks if she remembers the day she got it, but the girl snaps her gaze away, wrecked with distress, unable to picture a single moment. All she can manage is this. The mark was already sitting on her when you attacked her founder. Her words slam into him, and he goes stone-cold quiet, staring at that old mark like it's about to reveal everything. After a beat, he shoots the girl a reassuring thumbs up, thanking her for the info, and the three jump back into the conversation, like the tension finally breaks and everyone can breathe again. He lays out his theory to Rachel Forsard while she listens from the next room, eyes locked on him, because he's sure that weird symbol on the survivor's hand is a mark carved by the vampire. She steps into the room, admits his logic makes sense, then shuts it down fast because it's just a theory with no real proof yet. Still, she can't help thinking, if he's right, that mark could be a clue for the people who haven't been hit yet. He brightens up with fresh confidence, sure he's finally got a real lead that'll crack the case, and he earnestly thanks Ms. Rachel for her amazing cooperation. She gives a tiny, bittersweet smile, eyes barely lit, then tells him, softly but honestly, that she's just grateful she's been healthy. Her whole attitude snaps into something cold and greedy, and a sharp glint flashes in her eyes. She demands 60,000 gold for her help. Silva recoils in shock, and she laughs it off as a joke, then slams him with a bizarre counteroffer. She'll help him if he lets her dissect his body when he dies, because she refuses to let such a valuable specimen go to waste. Stunned, Silva can only tell her he'll think it over. The scene snaps to a quiet courtyard, where a young woman with dark pigtails lovingly tends a bed of white flowers. Then she beams at Dan the priest as he walks up and gushes about how gorgeous they look. Just as she reaches for the bloom, her fingers slip, and she jams her finger on a thorny stem, letting out a sharp cry of pain. The priest locks onto her hand, and when he asks, she beams and says she got that bruise the day before, then blames herself for being too clumsy to notice how it happened. His face hardens into something lethal as he leans in and tells her straight, this isn't just a bruise, it's the devil's curse, and if she doesn't deal with it now, misfortune will hunt her down. A young woman snaps into terror at the word curse, and a calm priest tells her they have to rush to the church to break it before it's too late. Panicking, she blurts out that she'll do anything, begging him to save her as she stumbles away from the flowers and follows him.